You're listening to the Northern Hunter Podcast, home of all things hunting, fishing, and outdoors in Alaska.
Hey guys, this is Dalton here. I just have a quick segment to bring to you guys here before we get into the main show. I wanted to let you guys know that in this episode we have here with Brian, we get into some deep discussions about a few different topics, and Brian is expressive in his language, and I just wanted to let you guys know that if you have sensitive listeners in the vehicle with you or wherever you're listening to this podcast, you might want to tone that down, or maybe just listen to this one on your own. Or if you don't want to hear that language, then we're just letting you guys know we try to keep this podcast pretty family friendly, but we didn't want to clutter up the show with a bunch of excessive bleeping. We're just letting you guys know this is not for sensitive listeners, so I hope you guys enjoy the show. Also, another quick announcement is we have a recent partnership that we have announced with Baitum 907, bear attractants and lures for bear baiting. We have a discount code through them now. I know we'd said in the show before that we do not have that, but we do now. Listeners get 10% off from Baitum 907 if you go to their website. On the promo code slot at checkout, you can type in TNHP. That's the abbreviation for our podcast name, the Northern Hunter Podcast. So TNHP at checkout will get you guys 10% off. We would appreciate it if you guys went and took advantage of that and helped support Jess and Baitum 907. All right, enjoy the rest of the show.
All right, everybody, welcome back to the show. I'm your host, James Payne, and I'm joined here with Northern Hunter co-founders Dalton Gray.
Hello.
And Mariah Humphreys.
Hello there.
And I'm sure everybody has seen from the title today, but we have the great pleasure of sitting down with Brian Call from Gritty. How you doing, man?
Good. I'm looking forward to this. Let's talk some bears.
Yes, sir. Yeah, we really appreciate you coming on the show and being willing to share some of your insights on bear hunting and getting out in the woods this time of year. We're pre-recording this a little bit, but it's we're all on the edge of our seats, man, trying to get out there.
Yeah, I think by the time this airs, it'll be May.
Yeah. I want to say this one's coming out May 1st. So
I believe so.
People will know if I'm correct on that when it comes out.
But a lot of folks will already have baits in the woods. I know I will.
Hopefully the snow's gone, but we'll see. It's different every year.
Yeah,
so we're going to be, I think by this time we'll have 2 episodes out, or at least kind of more like 1.5, about our favorite style of bear hunting, which is setting up baits in thick country where there's very limited visibility and just getting right up tight and close with these bears.
Mm-hmm.
But if you are wanting to get out and chase these things around in the mountains and do more of a spot and stalk style, which I highly recommend most people do both.
Yeah.
That's what we're here to talk about today. So,
yes, sir.
Brian, you are a avid bear hunter, we'll say, and have done a phenomenal job of putting out a lot of films and just kind of showcasing the whole spot and stalk style for the world and kind of exposing that side of things. So why don't you go into a little bit about, let's start off with how you got into that and why you think it's important. I think that's kind of a baseline we like to touch on is the importance of bear hunting.
I grew up with the typical, like my dad was a big time bow hunter, and mostly for deer and a little bit of elk. And we hunted the coast a lot because I'm from Oregon.
Okay.
And grew up in Oregon City, which is a little town. Like, it's not so little now, but when I was a kid, went to Oregon City High School. I didn't really hunt bears when I was younger. It was mostly all bow hunting, and it was all deer. And like I said, a little bit of elk. But then I was dreamt about it. Whenever I looked at outdoor magazines, I mean, bear hunting was always something I drool over, dream about.
Yeah.
For some reason, 2 animals that I just were like, for me, pinnacle, like experiences, animals I want to chase was mountain goats and bears. And I think maybe it's because I like fur more than horns. Like, I think I'm really a sucker for, that's why I like tar too. Like there's something about fur that I got furs everywhere. Like they're laying all over the house. I like fur. And I think, I don't know where that comes from. It just is. So I always wanted to do it. Well, one year it was 2007 was the first time that I actually hunted bears.
Okay.
And my uncle said, hey, I'm headed up to Prince of Wales Island, and it's this hunt. Come and join me. It's going to be fun. Maybe it was 2005, but it was right in that window, right? And so mid 2000s, and I just dreaming about it. So I went to Prince of Wales Island, and I hunted coastal black bears first time in my life, and we saw some giant bears. And then I took my biggest black bear I don't know how many I've killed now over the years, but
it's a good problem to have.
I've lost track.
Yeah.
Like I was trying to think of it today. My brother goes, how many bears have you killed? And I'm like, I don't know now. But I've been able to kill multiple bears per year, sometimes 3 or 4 in 1 year. I've been able to go and hunt in places like British Columbia, Alaska, as well as the lower 48 from Washington, Oregon, Montana, Wyoming, Idaho, all the states up west, and then, like I said, in Canada as well. So when I was hunting bears on that trip, I killed a bear that squared over 7 feet and had a 21-inch skull. Man. So that was my first black bear, and it's my biggest black bear today.
Yeah, that is a massive black bear.
That's a tank. Yeah.
So I had no idea what I was doing. Complete just luck. And which annoys me to this day when people have never done it before, go out and they kill what people have been trying to kill for eons, It seems to be like sometimes that's the way it goes, but I killed a giant, and ever since that moment, I've been on a bear hunt every year after that. Like once I had a taste and saw it and experienced it, it was just unbelievable. It was unbelievable. And the way it felt to be in the hills in Southeast Alaska and to see these bears come out and pop out on a road or on a beach or something, it was just such a rush, and it was so intimidating. They were big, like grizzly bear size big. And so to see one and to be within 50 yards of it, it was just awe-inspiring. And at the time, I didn't know much about bear behavior, much about bears. And so there was this, I assumed they were all going to eat me, at the same time. Like I had this really infant-like idea of bears, like a real, like your city slicker type, inexperienced type of view of bears. And so I literally, when I had to track my bear and I had to go out and follow a blood trail, my heart was pounding. I thought, I'm going to come on this bear. It's going to maul me to death. Like I had genuine, boogeyman fears of bears while I was doing it. But there was something about it that I wanted to prove to myself that I could do. In fact, my first one, I stalked this bear before I killed the other one, which was on the last day of the hunt. I had gotten close and I was determined to do it with a bow until the last day. And so I got so close so many times, and there was a big, beautiful black bear in a green meadow. And there was one giant tree kind of in between myself and the bear. And so I crept up to the tree, and then I was going to lean out and shoot the bear. Yeah. And so I got to the tree and I leaned out and I was going to shoot the bear. And when I leaned out, the bear was like 6 feet away, like right there. I could smack it on the ass. And so I leaned back from the tree and I just started to freak out. I was like, you're like, because when I crept between him and I kept the tree between us and snuck up to that tree, he seemed like he was a good 100 yards beyond that tree. Yeah. And I never knew where he was the whole time I got up to the tree. So when I crept around it, I was looking beyond. And when he was right there, I scared the crap out of me, and its butt was to me. I leaned back for the tree and I just started backing away from the tree as fast as I could. And I got about 20 or 30 yards from the tree. Now I got some distance between me and this bear. And then I started making my way around at full draw. I was at full draw the whole time. And I was just kind of walking sideways to try to get the shot. And right about then the wind switched and that bear just picked its head up and just bolted. And I never got the arrow off. But that rush, that excitement, that feel, being that close to a bear, I just wanted to learn more about them. I just wanted to do it. And so from that day on, and then I shot a giant on the last day. I'm like, I did not want to go all the way to the island, do the Southeast Alaskan hunt and come home empty. And everyone in our group had shot one. So I put the bow down and I got a rifle out and I shot one on that last day.
Man.
Very nice.
Went home. And then after that, I started going back to Prince of Wales every year.
Yeah.
And did that for, I think I've been there like 5 times. And then, then I was going there for blacktail as well in August, doing that. And the island just became my annual retreat until they changed the regulations and the tags, and they started to overshoot them on the sows on rivers and all kinds of issues that came along with that. Right.
Yep.
So then I started to go like, I still want to hunt bears, but I'm not getting tags and opportunities there the way that they've changed it to a draw.
Right.
And so that's when I started hunting in Canada a little more. Killed some bears with my bows up in Canada, which was great. Spot and Stalk. It was awesome.
Yeah.
And then I started hunting down here with different people, and I got on a hunt with Ryan Lampers. And it was the first time I had ever hunted high mountain bears. Like I'd always hunted coastal, big open areas, BC, farmlands, this kind of big black bear type country.
Yeah.
But I never hunted like Rocky Mountain black bear.
Right.
And so hence I had killed black color phase bears. That's all there is in a lot of these places, right? There's no chocolates, there's no reds, there's no blondes, there's nothing quite unique. It's black and more black.
Yeah.
So when I got in the mountains and I saw so many color phases and so many bears and the behavior and the beauty of the spring and all, I was addicted, and it's just been that way ever since.
All right, folks, I want to take a second to tell you about a product I found this last year and have absolutely fallen in love with. It's the Stealthy Hunter rifle cover. I used one on a recent black-tailed deer hunt in southeast Alaska, and it did a great job of keeping the saltwater and debris out of the action and also protecting the scope on my rifle from getting knocked around and damaged. On top of all that, the carry handle made it easy to transport the rifle to and from the boat during the hunt. When it got wet from rain and ocean spray, I hung it up at camp to dry at night, and it was always dry in 20 minutes or less. Stealthy Hunter also offers a wide variety of nutritional supplements for the outdoorsman, such as CBD oils, essential vitamins, turmeric, and bone broth. In the gear shop, they also have a lightweight first aid kit, glassing pads, and stuff sacks to organize your gear and your pack. Go check out Stealthy Hunter's website and use the code TheNorthernHunter at checkout to get a discount on your order today. All Stealthy Hunter equipment is proudly made in the USA. Now, in our interview a couple weeks ago with Ryan Lampers, previous to this show, I want to circle back to what you just mentioned about going on a hunt with Ryan.
I was thinking the same thing.
Because the way Ryan describes your first mountain black bear hunt with him was that you invited yourself on that hunt. So I'd like to circle back to that and just tell us how that transpired.
Yeah, how would I go about inviting myself on a hunt with Ryan Lampers?
Ryan Lampers is a liar. That's the first thing you need to know. A liar. Actually, it was so funny because I had met Ryan years before at a train to hunt event. And he's a monster, and it was awesome to get to know him, and I filmed him, and I got him to come on the podcast with me, which was a whole day affair from morning till dark. I was like, you should just come on, and I'm not going to take no for an answer, and and all this. And
I've heard that filming Ryan years ago was about like trying to film Bigfoot. It just wouldn't happen.
It wouldn't happen.
Yeah.
No, and when he came and he sat down to do the podcast, his wife is like, this is a miracle. I can't believe he's going to do a podcast with you. He doesn't do this kind of stuff. How'd you talk him into it? I need to know the secrets and stuff. And I was like, I don't know. I just don't quit, My mom is pretty hardcore introvert. I have some siblings that are that way. I kind of like introverted people, and I'm patient with them. And Ryan had a lot of respect for me before this. And then as we got to know each other, I didn't know it because he'll never tell you, but he did. And, you know, he respected what I was about, you know? So he came on that podcast, and that began our friendship, hanging out together. And I just really loved Ryan, his work ethic, his skill, his demeanor. And you might think when you meet Ryan, you know, that he doesn't like you very much. But I knew that couldn't be true. It had to be just his introverted personality. So where other people are put off, I was undaunted. And so over time, we just continued to hang out and be friends a little bit here and there. And then what happened was he had decided somewhere, because he didn't tell me, but he had sort of decided he was going to quit his job and try to do his podcast with his wife, Hunt Harvest Health, kind of full time. And she had been pushing for him to share himself more and to be, you know, to do what I was doing, basically. Like, she's like, you have the talent and the skill, and you're a remarkable person. You just need to put yourself out there. And so he had done a hunt with his friend, Jeff Lusk, and they had filmed a year of hunts. And they had a little bit of partnership from a few brands that kind of helped paid a little bit for some of this. And they went out and they did a series of hunts and filmed it, but it never left the hard drive, you know? And I understand why. It's really tough to do. It's you know, it's not easy. And so the following year I guess they had gotten another cameraman, and they were going to go back into this bear area. And Ryan is sitting there, and he's like, he calls me on the phone, and he says, yeah, I'm heading to go on this bear hunt. And he's like, I have this guy who was going to be there, and he was going to film it, but he's bailing out on us. So now we're kind of screwed, because we need a guy that can hunt, that can run a camera, you know, even edit, somebody who can like keep up, is willing to go and wants to go where we can go, and that we can trust and keeps a secret. Like, we need that guy. And he's like, he throws that out there, and I'm just thinking, who could do that? Who could do that? And so I couldn't figure it out. And so he called another day or two later, and he's like, do you got any idea? And he brings it up again. And I think the third time that we had the conversation, I started to think, wait a minute. He's inviting me to go hunting with him. That's what this is. This is an invite. This is how Ryan Lampers invites people to do something with him. Yeah. So I said, wait a minute. Are you inviting me to go on this hunt? And he's like, oh, I mean, I'm not doing anything. I mean, if you want to go, it's an option. If you want to. And I'm like, well, consider me in. I'm going, you know. And so you can say I invited myself because he set it up that way. But the truth was, the man was fishing for me to volunteer myself.
So that's from an introvert. I'm very introverted myself, actually. I don't know if people can tell by the way I talk on the show, but when I'm on the mic, this is probably the most I talk. Ever. Really. And, that is a very picture-perfect, accurate introvert way to invite somebody to do something. Just, hey, what would you think about this?
Right.
Well, it was great. We did the hunt, and that man has killed some bears in a totally different style and sort of place than I had. You know, you're dealing with the snow melt, the springtime. You're not hunting on rivers. You're, you know, near the ocean or on the coastlines eating mussels or anything like that. It was a whole different thing. Yeah. And we covered some miles and saw some beautiful places. And we every year since, it seems like we have just some phenomenal experiences in some amazing places. And I just think, if you were to say you could do one hunt a year, like one species only, it's like, it's hard to turn away from spring black bear because, you know, it's like tags are plentiful. The locations they live is phenomenal.
Yeah.
The spring is such a beautiful time to be hitting the mountains. You just see it just go from sort of snow melt and mud and no leaves to just exploding with life
Right.
over the course of 2
Right.
to 3 weeks. So
Yeah. Well, I know we've talked about that on our show before, just about the importance of predator control and the population of bears, even in the lower 48, like where you guys are hunting, I'm sure is very underrated, and people don't realize just how many bears there are out there
Mm.
and the impact that they have on the ungulate species. Down there, it's going to be your deer species and your elk. And I'm sure in some areas the Shiras moose that you guys have down there. But up here, it's moose and caribou, and in some areas they can put hurting on a few different sheep, and in some areas. And so just kind of touch on that a little bit, and the importance of bear hunting and that predator control mindset that you guys have, because you guys don't short yourself on time for ungulate species in the fall. And you carve out extra time on top of your ungulate species hunts in the fall to go out in the springtime and hunt these bears. So just talk about why you view that as important and why you've chosen to do it year after year after year.
I would argue that I would say that the main reason, one of the biggest reasons why, there's so many reasons for why somebody hunts.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's different for all. There's not just one thing. Predator management is one piece of a whole suite of reasons that motivate me. I think I heard Stephen Ranella say one time, I hunt for the food, I hunt for the adventure, and I hunt for conservation, right? And there's all this, and he's like, and if you were to pull, especially the food part out of it, he's like, I don't think I would hunt. If the food part was just removed, I just don't know that I'd have the will or the drive to go out and hunt. And I have felt that way for years. Like, I need like a reason. I need purpose. I need meaning for when I go out and I hunt. And when I hunt bears, I want to pull out some of those bears that are really hurting the calving situation. Some of those bears are so skilled at tracking like a cow in heat. We've watched them track her. He knows that she's about to give birth and just waits for her to start to give birth and then runs in and just grabs it. And what can the cow do? Like once they're on the scent of a birthing, that they're just like a bird dog, that elk ain't getting away.
Yeah. Right.
It's just, that's why they all birth them at the same time. So the bears just can't kill them. Like they kill half, but they can't eat that many all at once. Right. If they distributed the birth out, you'd be screwed. But the whole point is that so many X amount are just getting sacrificed every year.
Yeah.
Right.
It's what nature does. And so when you look at bear hunting, for me, yes, there is, when we pull an old mature boar out of a space, we're saving other bears. We seem to be increasing the overall bear population. At least that's what we've seen. And I do believe that those really smart and older and experienced ones are the ones that are killing more calves and stuff than your middle-aged and young, your medium bears and younger. They're eating grass. They're eating bugs. Right. They're eating that kind of stuff.
Yeah, we're scavenging the leftovers.
Yeah, and so, I think it is important. In certain areas, I think that a certain bear, they'll say like there are mountain lions that have a one-trick pony. They can kill porcupines like crazy. Like that is their thing. And a certain mountain lion will have a taste for it and a skill for it, and can skillfully kill that particular species or animal. And another cat could come along and try it and just get wrecked and never try it again. Yeah. And so you have specialists. You have the same thing in the bear. They're super smart. They're often as unique as individual people in what they like to eat, when they like to sleep, how they like to move. They have personalities, and you have specialists. And some of these bears are skilled at killing other bears and have that drive to kill the cubs and anything it can find. Other ones are like, yeah, I need deer fawns, right? Other ones are like good at getting at nests and eggs and whatever. Like they have their skill sets. But I just think that when you can go into certain areas and you can kill a mature boar, it takes years for another bear to come in and take its place, get to be that age. Yeah. And I do think you're extending the life of the population of, or you're increasing a little bit of that population of the deer and the elk in the region. But I don't know that. I mean, we often hunt areas, Dalton, where nobody goes.
Yeah.
And some of these bears are 18 years old, 20 something years old that we harvest.
Wow.
No one's killed them in that window of time.
Right.
And it's like, how much were they? I don't know. The deer and the elk are doing fine. How much is the bear impacting the population? It's really hard to say.
So
I'm not purely motivated to hunt bears to reduce. I think there's other things that are more impactful on ungulate populations than weather, primarily, especially.
Yeah.
But more than bears are.
Right.
So I just know this. There's a lot of them.
Yeah.
They taste awesome.
Right. Yeah.
And the biologists are managing the resource to maximize it.
Yeah.
They're saying, hey, here you can kill 2, and here you can kill 1, and here you can kill 1, and in here you can kill 1. And we have leftover tags. So come one, come all. And I can go out, hit the mountains, and I can stack up my favorite game meat in this place, and this place, and come home with enough canned bear meat and bear hams and smoked hams that I can eat with my kids and my wife for the next 12 months, which is never lasts that long. We go through 2 to 3 bears in 6 months.
Yeah.
That sounds about right.
Yeah. And you know, I think we might have a slightly higher problem with the bear predation up here than some regions will, just due to the sheer density. I know for a fact, I've spoken to people that are managing kind of the recovery of different struggling herds throughout the state. And I know that one was the muskox up north. And they had found that a big contributing factor to the drop in the population of the muskox herd was actually grizzly bears, which kind of like you said, were some of them are one-trick ponies. They found it wasn't all grizzly bears, but there were several in the area that had just learned that this time of year, those muskox are dropping calves, and that's an easy meal.
Yeah.
And so they went up there and through the motivation of management, took those particular bears out of the equation.
Yeah.
And suddenly the herd starts coming back.
Yeah.
There was another study done, it was a while ago, but it was about grizzlies down with the Nilchina herd for caribou.
Yeah.
And actually, I was reading this on our sponsor page, Batum 907. They had posted something about it, and that kind of piqued my interest. But there was a study done where grizzlies were taking, on average, over the course of, I want to say it was a 3-year study, but on average, 34 calves per bear per year.
Wow.
In that region. And that was one of the big reasons for the takedown. So
yeah.
But I also really agree with what you're saying. Bears taste awesome.
Yeah.
I mean, that is a huge motivating factor for my spring hunting.
Yeah.
I love bear sausage and bear roasts.
I have this is something that I've never understood it. I'm not wired this way. You know, I love Meat Eater, and I remember the show where they're like down south and they killed monkeys, and they're like, I don't want to eat it because it looks like a person.
Yeah.
You know, he was talking one time about he had a legal tag where he could have shot a wolverine, but he's like, man, I just felt like there's not very many of them, and I really didn't want to, and so I decided not to. And you know, I'm not wired that way, folks.
No,
like I am. Maybe I feel like if you're okay with killing within the legal system and the tag allocations, deer, elk, moose, why should I give cats and wolves and bears a free pass?
Right.
Like, they're all created equal in my eyes. There is no like hierarchy of, well, these get hunted and these don't. It's all of it is the same. How can you sit there and say, yeah, I get it. kill this species over here, but this one's off limits. I don't understand it. It doesn't compute in my head. Never did. I was a missionary in Japan for 2 years. One thing I appreciate about the Asian culture, they'll eat anything.
Yeah. That's right.
It's like protein. There's no emotions there. It's like,
right,
dude. And I think like it's weird the way that we act. Like you're sitting there talking to some Koreans and they eat dog and they're like, it's great. It's great. Yep. And I'm thinking, I'll try it. I don't care. I do not have these sort of sentimental attachments to certain animals, like a horse. I ate so much horse in Japan. It's one of my favorites. I don't get it. Well, it's it's not my horse. It's not the one I rode and grew up with. I ate a different one. Like, I don't know. I don't have this.
Well, and I've heard the argument.
Have this.
I've heard the argument from people that the reason they don't want to hunt wolves and coyotes and stuff like that, it just looks too much like my dog. And it looks too much like a house pet.
I've heard that.
I don't get it,
but it's not.
I do not get it. That logic, that sentimentality, that softness, let me call it that. I just don't relate to it at all. And I love my dog,
right?
But this wolf isn't my dog.
Yeah,
I don't love your dog. Your dog comes in my yard, I might shoot your dog.
That's right. Yeah, I second that motion.
I don't understand how everyone doesn't agree with me.
No,
I just don't get it.
Well, nobody on this podcast, Brian. We're all on the same page.
Okay, good.
Easily.
Good.
I grew up trapping with my dad, and it was funny because my dad had a trapping partner. And they shared trapping cabins and stuff. And we'd go out every weekend, every other weekend. If it was wintertime, we were out running the trap line. And my dad's buddy's wife was she worshipped wolves. Now, I don't worship wolves. My dad doesn't worship wolves.
Yeah, right.
But and she was okay with my dad trapping them, but she did not want her husband to kill a wolf. It was just like, don't do it. You better not kill him. Absolutely not.
Now, for folks listening right now, you can't see this, but Mariah is sitting in his office chair with 2 wolf hides that he has shot himself.
Oh, nice.
And he's sitting on his wolf hides.
So I was inspired from when we talked to you another time with your bears, and I thought, I like that idea. I'm gonna bring the wolves in and show them off.
I like your wolf throne. I love it. I think it's great. I think that when it comes to, I think we should do what we can to support our wildlife officials, our wildlife biologists, each state. They go through the effort of figuring out what the quotas are, how many we have available to hunt, what the tags should be. And I think we should rely and we should lean on what they have to say.
Yeah.
And actually do our best to, meet those needs. And if there's a quota for the amount of bears they want to have taken out of an area or whatever, for wolves, there's a balance they're trying to achieve. And we should pluck those resources out and leverage them to the best of our abilities. If that's for the fur, if that's for the hide, if that's for whatever that is, do it. It's a resource that is out there. We should leverage it best we can. And I do believe that modern society has this attitude toward that sort of activity, thinking that it's unworthy of the modern man. And I think that there needs to be more education and more representation for the value of it. And that's why we hunt a lot and we film lots of bear meat eating shows and canning. And we talk about the bear meat as much as we do, because look, I don't buy beef. I don't need to get this stuff down here. I don't support mass feedlots and monocultural crops that are taking over an entire section of a state. It's all corn. Like I don't contribute to much of that. I, as a human in the modern world, there's some, but man, I really go out and I'm able to hunt bears and elk and deer and moose and caribou, bring that stuff home, leverage the bear fat, which is for me very important. And I'm able to show that to people. And that's a renewable resource. We kill those bears, we take them out, we eat them, we live on them.
Right.
And then we still do things to help the bear population overall do well. And then we manage how many elk and deer we take. So everybody gets a turn. We don't take too much. And it's a brilliant, wonderful system.
Yeah.
And so I think, making sure that everybody, I try with our bear hunts to show that we care about the hide. Sometimes we leave them because we're really remote, but the meat always comes out.
Yep.
And I think that's important, but you'll be shocked. Like how many people are mad at us if we leave a fur behind, a bear fur. It's like, they don't care if you leave a deer fur behind. Nobody says a word. They lose their ever living mind if you pack out 100 pounds of meat and you leave a hide.
Right.
It's like, how could you? It's like, well, the meat is really important. And I just didn't need this fur, I have a lot.
Yeah.
And it's funny, some states, it's illegal to leave the fur, but legal to ditch the meat.
Alaska
kind of messed up.
Alaska kind of goes back and forth depending on the time of year and where you're at in the state and everything like that. It's depending on where you're hunting, you'll find different regs for each of them. But it's certain bears. I mean, like grizzlies. Yeah, I've heard of some people eating grizzlies, but
I've eaten coastal brown bear twice, and I can with great confidence say that will be the only 2 times I ever try coastal brown bear.
But what about an inland grizzly bear? Because I talked to a number of people and I ate some of mine.
Yeah.
It was good.
I've eaten inland grizzly bear a couple times, and I know Mariah has too, and I didn't have any issue with it.
No.
It's definitely a tougher meat. Depending on the time of year, the later in the year,
tough.
They're getting into a lot more, depending on the time of year, like later in the summer, they're getting to a lot more rotten meat. Whereas an earlier grizzly can taste better.
And like a nice late fall grizzly bear that's just been eating a lot of blueberries.
Yeah.
Ooh,
that's a great grizzly bear to eat. No problems there on my part. So I know we talked about on your podcast, I'm sure by this time that'll be probably out. We talked about the difficulty of some of these mountain bear hunts and kind of how people don't look at bear hunting as a mountain hunt when it very well can be. And the reality is, if you go out, you load up your backpack with all of your, let's just say, with air quotes, sheep hunting gear, right? You're going out for a mountain hunt. You got lightweight stuff. You're backpacking in. You're not on a motorized access area. You're on foot, and you have 7 to 10 days blocked off for this hunt. That's how you guys are doing a lot of these bear hunts in the mountains. So talk a little bit about your methodology, just kind of how you formulate a bear hunt plan, how long you like to be out there, what the weather is that time of year when you guys are hunting, and kind of what some of the challenges are that maybe some folks aren't familiar with mountain bear hunting.
So usually, pack with 10 days of food or 10 or 11 days of food, all of our camping gear, our hunting equipment, all that kind of stuff. We're somewhere in the ballpark of 70 pounds of gear heading in, right? And of that 70 pounds, it's about 2 to 2.5 pounds a day of food. So for me, it tends to be about 25 pounds of food and electrolytes and all that kind of stuff for a 10 or 11 day backcountry excursion.
Okay.
So my pack is somewhere between 45 and 50 pounds without the food, minus the food.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
And it can be lighter at times, but when you're talking about your rifle, your bullets, your binos, your optics, it can get up there.
Yeah.
But we're pretty well conditioned to that 70 pound, 65 pound load, 70 pound. And we know that every day it's going to get 2 to 2.5 pounds lighter.
Yep.
So when it comes time to pack out, when we kill a bear, we've gone from, whatever our packing weight was, we're down to about 40, 45 pounds. And then you add a bear on top of that, and a bear boned out with the hide and the skull. These mountain bears are not giant. Okay. You're not dealing with, a 6-foot mountain bear is big. That's pretty
Right.
dang big. 5.5 feet is pretty common, and you'll get them with big bodies, big heads, but they're just not like other bears in other regions. They they can't be.
Yeah.
They're eating huckleberries and blueberries and stuff at these high mountain elevations. They're eating tubers and flowers and plants, and there's not fish to really go at. There's not. Well, they're eating the occasional fawn and deer, but some in these mountain areas, most of their protein is from bugs. They're more of a bug eater and a plant eater up in these regions.
So do you see them flipping rocks a lot and digging out underneath the old stumps? And
Oh yeah.
That sounds pretty similar to interior Alaska.
Yeah.
They're 5.5 to 6 foot is pretty.
I think they say like 3 grubs, 3 little worms, larva grubs. There's about the same amount of protein as a hamburger. So a lot more protein in those little larvae than you realize.
I wouldn't have expected that at all.
No.
So when are you and Ryan going to start eating grubs in the hills then?
So you start if you freeze dry those grubs, you'll be really packing
I have a bag of mealworms I give those chickens. They're perfect like this. No,
sprinkle a little bit in the mountain house and
seriously. I'm actually a tough guy. Like I'll eat whatever. I lived in I've eaten some crazy things, but I do draw the line at mealworms. But anyway, I think so that's our load packing in, and then the bear deboned, and with the hide and the skull. We're typically around, I want to say, our pack out weight is about 110 to 115 pounds.
Yeah.
So it's a load. I mean, it's a grind. But you're talking about a 45-pound pack, and then the rest of that load is 70 pounds or something in there.
Yeah.
And we try to shave more and more off as we can. But it's similar to a mule deer buck, which we also do in one load. It's usually 120 pounds, and we pack out, get our base weight again down to 40 pounds or so. We get rid of all the food. We're on our way out. And you're now packing we leave the hide with the deer. We never pack out a cape. We Euro mount mostly everything.
Yeah.
So we got the skull and the horns, and then we got the deboned meat, and we can get that thing down to 110 pounds as well. So we're somewhere in that ballpark, which is doable for a deer or an elk. What are you guys laughing at?
Well, we've got this thing.
I think we titled a whole episode after it actually.
Yeah. So several weeks ago, we had an episode titled "Deer Don't Have Horns."
Oh, that was months and months ago.
It was months ago, but
yeah.
Oh, you're gonna have a hard time getting me to not say horns.
It's all right. I hear so many folks say it. I've kind of just had to let that one go over time. But it's just funny. Just kind of a quick question here. So how often are you guys having to deal with swollen creeks in the springtime?
Every time.
Yeah.
Every time.
So how do you deal with that? Because just for folks that aren't familiar with that, I mean, we're all soakingly wet familiar with this situation. About going into an area, and you can maybe walk across it on day 1, but then on day 7 or 10 on the way out, tell us what that might look like.
It could be ankle deep on the way in, and then when you come out, it's a raging torrent that is over your head.
Yeah.
So, and the problem with Alaska is there's no, it seems to never calm down anywhere along the stretch. Like there's nowhere to shoot across.
Right.
It's like you're shooting the rapids, and then you're hoping you can land on the other side and not be dead.
Yeah.
So with the glacial runoff, it's a whole different ballgame. So although I've seen some of these guys like go through those on a Cam-End Defender with a snorkel and come out the other side, and I thought for sure it was over. And I was like, wow, that's a whole lot easier than what I've been doing. You know, we were crossing with trekking poles and waders, you know,
Yeah.
and a few spots, and it was sketchy. But we use rafts. We typically leverage the alpaca pack rafts. We've been using them for a long time.
Yeah.
And they're 5. We use the caribou almost for exclusively 90% of our trips, especially in the spring. We're using the caribou. It's really thin material. It's not as heavy duty as like the mule, but you know, we have been able to, because weight's such a big deal.
Yeah.
You know, there's a difference. There's a 7-pound mule or a 5-pound caribou.
Yeah.
Can we do all the same things with the caribou that we've done with the mule? That's the question. Can we really do it? And the answer is, so far, yes. Everything we've been able to do the same. But the caribou does get a few more holes in it more easily here and there, which you have to patch and handle as they come. You know, you hit a little beaver, what do you call it? Stick poking out of the reeds and stuff, and pop, you know, and it's like, it's always a slower leak. And then we go through and we patch it up, and we're back on the river. But we're just much more careful with the rafts now too. But the 5-pound caribou, that's kind of ideal for us in the spring. And usually what happens, we'll bring Chota hippie waders.
Yep.
And we will simply, and some Crocs maybe. And then we'll just throw the waders on, the Crocs, and we'll cross some of these rivers that we can. Because some of these spots we got to cross, you're crossing 6 of them, 6 little tributaries into the main river in the first 5 miles.
Yeah.
It's like constant. Well, when that happens, those Chota hippie waders are nice because the water is cold, and you can quickly get across, throw your boots back on. You keep your socks on the whole time, so you can just lace up your boots and go.
Right.
And it's efficient. And then we bring the rafts, and when the water gets dangerously deep and you can't cross safely in waders, that's when we pull out the rafts. We blow up those rafts, and we find a safe place to shoot across. Usually it's where the tributary runs into the main drainage, main river. And when that happens, you know, it's kind of like you're kind of hitting the main river and scooting around the tributary, because that tributary is just coming in hot.
Yeah.
And usually on some of those spots, it's kind of sketchy because you got to hit your exit point, because if you don't, you're going to die in a log jam 30 yards below.
Right.
It can be dangerous, very dangerous. I think the most dangerous thing we probably do is, you know, falling off a cliff or a ledge and the water, you know, drowning in a river or something.
Right.
So those are never to be taken lightly, something to be very serious about and careful with.
Yeah.
And
do you guys bring PFDs for crossing water or no?
We bring PFDs for long floats, but not for crossing rivers.
Yeah.
No, it's just, man, for those little jaunts and stuff, it's the weight penalty. So we typically leave that behind, and we use it though. When we have a 20-mile float, we've been using the PFDs now, and we get rid of the, we've also changed the boat as well. If we're going to be floating a long ways, the mule is a nice boat. It works really well. It's only 7 pounds. Or the hunter, which is 10 pounds. And where other guys aren't carrying as much camera gear and stuff as we are. So I have 20 pounds of camera gear, 18 pounds of camera gear. So everybody else, take your kit and add 18 pounds. That's what I'm going to do. And so it's a problem for me. You know, I need that caribou to be, I need the 5-pound boat, not the 7-pound, not the 10-pound. I need as few pounds as I can get. So we're fortunate in that we have a lot of hyper lightweight gear, including our Weatherby rifles.
Yeah.
Which are like right around 6 pounds with scopes, you know?
Yeah.
So you're talking, we're able to shave, you know, some good Dyneema Cuban fiber materials. We're using those. We got lightweights, a lot of lightweight stuff. So, but definitely, I think for those longer floats, the caribou, Brian has done it. Ryan has floated 20 miles in a caribou full with 2 bears and all his gear. And the thing's not rated. He was at least 100 pounds over the weight requirement.
Wow. Yeah.
The thing was half sinking. And, but you know, we've managed to do it. It can do it. It's an impressive little boat, but I would recommend the mule if you had to do a lot of packing. But if you really want to just have a nice, safe, like heavy, big boat, the Hunter's really nice.
Yeah.
And then the Forager is what we're using this year for, we have some moose hunts planned in Alaska, and we plan to do quite a bit of floating, and we're going to bring on the Foragers this time.
Yeah. No,
Nice.
I think you'll really like those Foragers. I have a little bit of experience with the Forager, and it's an impressive little boat. That's yeah, it's impressive how much weight you can put in there, and it does just fine. But you know, I've always had a hard time trusting a boat to take on that much weight when if you don't tie it down on a gravel bar, it'll blow away in the wind.
Yeah, I believe me.
And I from personal viewing, that is exactly what happens if you don't tie them down.
That was a new thing for us. I didn't tie my boat down, and it came back and it had a whole bunch of holes in it because it blew. It was tied. It was tied with one rope.
Yeah.
But it wasn't.
But it would tumble.
It wasn't
So
secured.
it was just whipping in the wind on the Alaskan beach, and it had like 3 holes in it when we got back. And it was just like a kite on a stick, you know, like on a tree. And I was like, dang it. So
yeah,
you learn as you go. But I would say I took that Hunter and I filled it with 2 caribou, all the meat, bone in, filled the pontoons and all my gear, everything into the Hunter. So I put 2 caribou and all my stuff, and I floated the whole way out in that miserable little bobber. And it was, while Ryan and Chris were in the big, heavy, giant boats.
Right.
It was maneuverable, but I was wet the whole time.
Yeah.
It was coming. I had waders on, but I was cold.
And did you have the self-bailing model in that one, Brian?
Yes.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Excellent.
So it would just take on some water and come out. My feet were kind of perpetually in water.
Yeah.
Because I had so much stuff on the deck.
Yeah.
But I was impressed, dude. I was way over the weight limit on that too. And
yeah,
it floated in Alaskan River for like 40 miles. So
yeah.
Wow.
That's pretty great. All right, folks. We all know that one of the most common mishaps in hunting is damage to your rifle scope. Last year, I found the solution to that problem with the Stealthy Hunter rifle cover. It wraps around your scope and actions securely to protect it from getting knocked off of zero or even severely damaged. Stealthy Hunter also has a glassing pad and a wide variety of supplements for the outdoorsman, such as protein powder, CBD products, turmeric, and gut health supplements. They also make a lightweight trauma kit weighing in at just 14 ounces that includes everything you need and nothing you don't for all of your backcountry medical emergencies. To shop all of their equipment and supplements, go to StealthyHunter.com and enter the discount code at checkout, The Northern Hunter, to save on your order today. All Stealthy Hunter equipment is proudly made in the USA. So let's kind of run back into the methodology of bear hunting really quick. So let's just kind of paint a picture here, and I want to ask you for more questions. So we kind of hit on gear. We kind of talked about access, and you're using boats a lot to get into these high mountain areas. You get into a tributary, you kind of cross in, you get into a ridge where you just want to kind of run a ridge line and get way back into the middle of nowhere, right? So you get there. What are you looking for to find some bears? How long do you spend at any given spot before you kind of move on? And then once you find bears at particular elevations that I'll let you, kind of decide what elevations you find works, early or late spring, and then how you kind of adjust your game plan based off of what you're seeing there.
Yep. So we are sort of in touch with local people, friends, game people like officers. We're kind of keeping track of snow levels and trying to figure out where it's at, and also the green up. Like, where are the wildflowers? Where are they popping up? Where are the little green
Right.
shoots? Where is the stuff that these bears really like? And we're sort of waiting to jet out to our spots when we start to hear about the flowers just starting to blossom at these higher elevations.
Yeah.
Right as the snow is melting. So a week or so after that snow is kind of receded, then you start to get these little shoots, and depending on the sun. And we really want to be there kind of right in that window where everything is brown, like nothing is green yet. And there's very little grass.
Mm-hmm.
But within 2 to 3 days, those little spots, there are certain bowls, like you'll be in a region, and let's say it stretches 5 miles up and down river. And then there's like 5 tributaries up there every mile or so. There's certain high elevation bowls that just green up before everything else. There's like 2 or 3 bowls that turn green about 5 days to a week ahead of the whole rest of the area. Those little salad bowls, Ryan calls it chartreuse. Those little chartreuse green.
I have come to love that term,
Yes.
Brian. It's such a fun word
I
to
say
say.
it's pretentious. It should be neon green. Okay. But he says chartreuse. We're looking for that salad bowl. And what we do is we're just trying to find where it's turning green, because what we find is the bears concentrate there. The first bears, it's the only game in town. It's the luscious, most tasty, most desirable feed. And when it seems like when they're coming out of their dens, they're concentrated there. At least the big bears generally are.
Yeah.
Within a week or two after that, you start to see them dispersed, and they're kind of more randomly located in other green up areas.
Right.
But usually you're talking the last week of April, first couple of weeks of May. After that, the bears start to spend less and less time in the wide open, more and more time under cover, because they don't need to leave. It's hot. They got fur. The sun is out. It's getting warmer. Why go into the wide open and eat when I can just stay in the shade and eat and flip rocks and eat bugs and do my thing?
No.
Right.
It just seems like we see them less and less as the season progresses. And the closer you get to June, the worse the hunt gets, in our opinion, because it gets closer and closer to the rut. The forest gets thicker and thicker with green. It gets dense. You can't see through it anymore. You can't spot game as easily. So that's kind of how we manage the timing of it all.
Well, and for people listening that are just getting into this, I think we went over it in the episode that'll air just before this one, but the reason that these bears congregate in areas like that is during hibernation, they're not actually sleeping, right? They're in their caves, they're lethargic and they're slowed down, and they go into a state where they're very, what's the right way to put it? Constipated, I guess.
Yeah.
Because they're in their den the whole winter. So obviously you don't want to be doing that. And in Alaska, we have the term is blowing the plug.
Yes.
At springtime, right after hibernation.
Right.
And so a big reason you want to look out for those salad bowls, like you said, is that's the high fibrous foods. That's what they're tackling first in order to get the fiber through their system and kind of
get their digestion going again.
Get the digestion going again. And once that's cleared, then they're free to go to other protein sources.
Right.
So
Exactly.
Yep. So we tend to look for the bears there. We climb to a high vantage point, where we can glass, and then we start glassing that area for bears. And we'll spend the day sometimes just glassing the whole, as far as we can see. When we finish kind of looking in this area after a couple of hours, we'll pull out a spotter. We'll look 2, 3, 4 miles, 5 miles away. We'll just look anywhere that we can put a spotter and see something, see if we can find any sign of an animal, no matter how far away it is. And then if we don't see much, or we see a bear really far away, we might decide, let's move closer to that bear that we do know is over here. Bears in these mountain regions are not the bear population isn't very dense. They're very spread out. It's not uncommon for us to go 5 or 6 days and not see a single bear. And I think a lot of guys that are new to it, they go out, they expect to see, a bear here and there, like you would see a deer, see a
Yeah.
doe and a fawn, and no, you see nothing.
Yeah.
Right.
You see nothing. That's totally fine. Don't lose hope. You just got to move to the next basin. So we usually spend a day. If there's no bears there, there's no bears there. Like they don't hide, especially in the spring. If it's a relatively open country, we have a pretty strong opinion that we're going to see a bear if he's there.
Yeah.
If he's out and about and doing bear things, we're going to see him. So if he's not there, we're pretty quick to abandon that spot and hike another 2 miles to the next basin and look over there.
Yeah.
And hike another 2 miles to the next one and look over there. Another 5 miles to this one and look over there.
Yeah.
And we have our route already planned. So before we leave, we know that this basin is here, and this basin is here, and this basin is here. And these are all meet the requirements or what we think will produce bears based on e-scouting and such. And Mark Livesey's Treeline Academy e-scouting courses, they'll lay all that out for you. They're so good. They're worth every penny. But you get out there and you can see those little basins and those little pockets. So we already know. One time we came with this plan, and Ryan wanted to hike my ass way out in the middle of nowhere, and we did. Then he kills this bear, and then he's like, it was the first bear we'd seen in 5 days, the only bear we'd seen, and we killed it. And he's like, we got to get gone. Like we need to be in a different spot. I'm glad we finally got a bear here, and it was his idea to hike 17 miles that day to the next spot where we did see another bear and kill him that day. But it was 17 miles. There really wasn't much to look at between that spot and the next spot. There just wasn't. It was just cliffs and rocks. Like the next, and that wasn't the most brilliant plan. Like there was, it was like, but he had to go in this area and see where we killed that bear and learn that, no, it's not great. But it was so isolated and so far away from everything else where all the other good hunting was.
Yeah.
We ended up killing 4 bears on the trip, but it was a hard hunt because we had picked a spot so far removed from all the rest of the little spots where we could jump and puddle, and go from place to place to place. So you want to plan it out ahead of time, and really have a backup plan, the next plan and the next plan, and put miles on the boots.
Yeah.
Because if you want to kill bears, big bears, the only thing that I've found, like we always talk about it, climb higher and go farther. Like those are the two things that we kind of do. It's like get higher, see more. And then we go right back down, and then we hike 6 miles over to this other spot where we saw a dot far away. We have a hunch it's probably a bear, and we kill. And I think a lot of times we'll go into an area and we'll come out and we'll know other people who were in there at the same time. They're like, hey, we saw your teepee, or we saw you guys back there. We glassed you, and we'll have killed 4 bears between the two of us. And we're like, how'd you do? And they're like, we didn't see a bear. What'd you do? They basically stayed in the same little canyon the whole time.
Right.
And hoped that a bear would come. And they just kept glassing and looking. They're like, there's just no bears here.
Yeah.
Well, we hiked 15 miles that way, 8 miles that way, 7 miles this way, and it's just like, it's kind of weird. It's like, we move a lot. And then glassing, I think, we really have our glass on our face from morning till dark.
Right.
It's a competition. Like we're trying to see who sees the most, and it's we barely break to eat.
Yeah.
Like we are constantly looking and looking and looking and looking. And I think that is, I think people who haven't really done that have no idea what real glassing is like.
Yeah.
Because for my whole life, I thought I was glassing a lot. No, not until I met Ryan Lampers did I realize what real glassing was and how long. And that's the thing. We'll kill 4 bears, but they were the only 4 bears that we wanted to kill. And it took us 12 days, let's say, to do it.
Yeah.
So of hard work and miles. So often when we kill that bear, it's like, we just saw a glimpse.
Yeah.
It went over this ridge.
Right.
And it took us 2 days to get over there to confirm what we saw and then find that bear and kill it.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the little clues, the little things it takes for us to have that kind of success on a continual basis.
Right.
it's the nature of mountain bear hunting.
Just a quick question about your glass, because I know you mentioned how important it is to spend a lot of time on your glass. So what do you like for binoculars? I know all the rage right now is the 15s and the 18s. I sheep hunted with a guy last year guiding, and he brought 18s. And I think for the Doll sheep hunting and the kind of terrain that we were in, relatively open, not necessarily a whole lot of cliff type of terrain, where you'd be looking under a half mile at really any given point. Most of it was going to be over that 1 mile, 1.5 mile mark. I experimented with them a little bit. I wasn't really a big fan of them. I've experimented with 12s and 15s as well. I think I see a spot for the 15s, but personally, I still run 10x42s. I've got a pair of Leica range finding 10x42s that I just have a hard time getting away from the 10s, because when I'm in on that final approach and I'm under the 1/4 mile mark, I like to be able to just keep it in my binoculars and get my ranges. But tell me what you prefer for your binocular setup, and then also your spotter as well.
I would say that we are 12s. We all run 12s.
Okay.
Pretty heavy into 12s. And then the weight is an issue. Optics get a little heavy.
Yeah.
But for bears, because bears are flashing signal lights, like they just stand out. They're black dots.
Yep.
They seem to have they seem to shine. Like you just see a bear, it's a bear.
They have like an iridescent shine to them. Yeah.
Yeah. And so we're not as picky about optics for spring bears we are for like a mule deer hunt late season.
Yeah.
Right. So we run 12 power, and we typically get them stabilized, on tripods and stuff.
Okay.
We glass for hours and hours and hours and hours. And it's typically 12 because it's 10's too small. 10's just not enough. And I could see how in Alaska, when I was there, how that would be fine, because it's so thick and dense.
Right.
And you only have visibility to so far.
Right.
I don't see where I need a 12.
Yeah.
We literally are in rocky mountain territory that we can see 5 miles away with. You can see so far that it's so wide and open and so far the option for the 12 is just kind of a no-brainer.
Yeah.
And then we both pack super lightweight spotters, like 40 power. I like I've been using it for years, the little military gold ring 40 power Leupold scope. It's flat, it's small, has a little zipper case around it. I throw that thing in my pack. Ryan brings a crappy Vortex 60 something or 40, 50 power or something like that.
Yeah.
And we stack them up side by side. I think the Leupold's better. And we could have that argument all day. They're both pretty low resolution compared to the Swaro Hubble telescope, but we don't need that, So we're running those 12 power binos and a little spotter, and we basically cover as much ground as we can with the binos.
Yeah.
And once we're like, I don't see anything, spotter comes out and we look the next mile further.
Yeah.
For a glimpse. And bears are out motoring and moving and stuff, and it seems to be plenty of glass for what we do.
Yeah.
The weight penalty is a big deal again, So and sometimes we split that where he carries a spotter and I don't, or I carry one, he doesn't, and we kind of, at times if we're not splitting up,
right.
We do that.
And one thing you run into, I like running a similar setup to you guys, where you kind of have a good magnification to where you can see from a utility standpoint, and then if you need to look closer, you need to look farther, you use the scope. The problem I found, because I've played around a little bit with those higher magnification ones too, is that it seems like when you do try to look closer, anything closer than that half mile mark, your motions become a lot more exaggerated. Yeah. Even a little bit of shaking, a little bit of wind movement, a little bit of anything.
Very hard to free.
It's very hard to stabilize.
Yeah.
And I was at a banquet earlier this year where they were doing a bunch of giveaways, and I got to play around with the SIG, the ones I'm looking at here. They're the Zulu 6. They're the self-stabilizing
the
ones.
16 power ones.
Yeah. And they were cool, but man, they're bulky. Like they are hefty.
Yeah.
Have you guys used them?
I haven't used them in the field yet.
I have gotten the chance. I had a couple of guides that I was on hunts with this last fall. 2 different fellas that had those Zulu 16 power
16 by 42. Yeah.
image stabilization, electro technology, whatever.
Yeah.
Glassing into the sun, they sucked.
Oh, really?
It was atrocious. I mean, all you got was just orange lines through the glass. It was awful. As soon as you got more than a binocular's width off one side of the sun or the other, now, this is obviously when the sun is low on the horizon, which oftentimes
happens a lot.
Yeah, it happens a lot because that's happy hour. That's when you're going to see a lot of animals. But as soon
we
as
just don't
you
have the angle of the sun like you guys do either. It just doesn't do yet.
Yeah. Springtime down here, it's low.
It's
quite a
ridiculous.
bit. Yeah.
And it's low for hours.
Yeah.
And it's annoying when you're trying to
especially when it's in your face while you're driving to work and in your face when you're driving back home.
Yeah. But so if you get it off the sun just a little bit, then they're a lot better, but they still have kind of like that clear haze type
that
of look to
surprises
them.
me from SIG.
Well,
I mean, you'd think they'd have better coatings than that.
Not necessarily. SIG is trying to be the best of the middle class, is what I've heard.
Okay.
Now, that being said, in flat light conditions where the sun is up high in the sky and there's a nice cloud layer and the light is nice and evenly dispersed, they're great. And, okay, as long as you're not moving them around real fast. If you move them around quickly just for a quick pan, your eyes pick up that it's trying to stabilize it, and it kind of throws you off a little bit. But if you just work it really, really slow, it's awesome. And then if you're just holding them still, there's no shake at all. It's almost as good as being in a spotting scope at low power. Now that, again, that's in a perfect situation. If you don't have to move very fast. To me, I don't have any use for them yet, but I've heard a few rumors, that nothing's confirmed at this point, that they are coming out with higher end glass options. If they could put in better glass with less sun glare, I would be very interested in them.
Well, it almost sounds from that description that they solved one problem but created a slew of other ones.
The other problem I have is they're powered by a AA. So
it's problematic.
I'm not a huge fan of that. But I as far as weight and bulk goes, I didn't think they were any worse than the Maven 18s that other guy had on the hunt. I didn't think they were any worse than that.
The website I'm looking at right here shows them at about 20 ounces. So,
yeah.
I heard you talked to the Loopold guy a while back, and
Tim Lesser.
Yeah, I was interested to hear your thoughts on have you used the new range finding binos yourself yet?
Haven't got them yet.
Okay.
Nope. But I do know a thing or two about them. I mean, I famously busted a pair of prototypes years ago. But I think that the thing with one thing about range finding optics is they are all kind of, from what I understand, using basically the same glass almost. Because the way that the rangefinder has to send the signal and come back, you can't put Swaro Vision. The coatings on glass are really what separate the big dogs from the mediocre and stuff. It's the coatings.
Right.
Coatings can't be leveraged the same way with the range finding tech. So you have to sacrifice a degree of clarity and so forth and performance for the range finding capability. And what that does, this is kind of from what I've heard, is it reduces the quality of like this high end, for example, Leica, right?
Right.
Because they got to step down to get the rangefinder to work. but it really does make those Vortex Leupold like more middle range glass. It raises it up. So you get a better optic out of a rangefinder bino from them than you do typically out of the rest of their lineup. Their glass has to go up for that.
Yeah.
The other guy's glass has to come down.
Gotcha.
Yeah, I was really interested in those just because of the price point. Was very decent.
The prototypes I messed around with, and then I think they're excellent. I think they're going to be really good. And the price point solid. The glass is clear. When you're using a range finding anything, I mean, to me, can it cut through the snow? Can it cut through the rain?
Right.
Can it cut through the fog? Like that is where it really shines. And I got to tell you, having done tests with all the brands and messing around with them, Leupold has kick-ass systems for their range finding setup. I think they have a way of, I mean, I've talked to guys that were guides and outfitters in Canada, in Alaska, who have used them all. And they're like, yeah, we wouldn't have got this XYZ critter if we had, because when we were sitting there, the only one that would give us the range is the Leupold. And so, I've kind of messed around with that myself. And I think they have a really stellar, and I've asked Leupold, how do you do it? You know, it sends like a packet of signals this way and it comes back with some signals, and there's different things that they do.
Yeah.
Another one that's kind of fascinating is the Garmin Zero range finding bow sight.
Right.
Yeah.
And those dudes, they're freakish over there.
Yeah.
Their range finding thing compared to where it was when it started to where it is now, like it might behoove one of these optics companies to figure out what the hell Garmin's doing to theirs. Like damn magic.
Right.
So, but again, it's like, there's all this engineering. It's a whole thing. I remember when I first got a Garmin Zero years ago, they gave me one. They're like, hey, we'd like you to try it and use it. And it would not send a signal on anything that was black. So if you were aiming at a black bear, it didn't give you a signal. Like it couldn't tell you how far the range was. So you had to range the grass or the bush next to it to get your range and put it back on. So, but now fast forward, the thing is amazing. So it just, tech is changing all the time. But but yeah, I think that the Leupold range finding bino is, for the price point, stellar.
At this point, everything I've got is Leupold, and I like running American brands, and so if I can, I'm going to stick with it.
I do too. Yeah, I do too.
Well, that's all good info. Did you have anything else to add before we move on?
No, I was just gonna, just a little tidbit, kind of with the clarity of those two is your light transmission through any range finding optic. You have to be careful with that as well, because like he was pointing out, with the reflective nature of catching that laser as it returns, you're going to lose some of your light transmission. So early morning hours, late evening hours. Yeah. If you're looking at getting something like this, that's one thing you want to watch out for.
And just on that note, I know I've mentioned this before. I've run those Leica range finding binos, and they're not the most expensive models either. They're not they're not the top model. But they're very functional. They're very simple. They do a good job. They don't have any ballistic input into them. They're very simple, just click range. That's it. And at some point, I definitely wouldn't mind getting one that has a little bit farther range capability. But with that being said, I have not had any issue with the snow or the rain, and I can glass bears on the sun, man. Like that's
cool.
I've looked down beaches and looked at bears on the coast, and they're walking with the sun at their back, and they're coming down the beach towards camp, and I can see them just fine. So whatever,
that's a scene most people can only dream of.
I mean, if it's the coating or if it's the glass quality, I'm not 100% sure. But whatever they're doing, it does seem to work real well. One more thing I wanted to ask you about, we had on here just some kind of gear and kit for these mountain bear hunts. Yeah, I wanted to specifically mention, you already talked about rifles and that you guys like Weatherby. I think most folks that go and watch any of your guys' films will be able to tell pretty much from film one that you guys like Weatherby.
Mm-hmm.
And that's awesome. Obviously, we're working with them and excited to shoot some of their guns this year. But the lightweight, you guys have shot that 338 RPM to quite the extent in the last couple of years. I know Adam brought it on a hunt a couple of years ago and took a real nice color phase bear. So I don't think we have to talk too much about the rifle side of it, but I did want to talk about footwear. You and Ryan both, I think, have a really unique preference for mountain hunting footwear. And it's very different from what mine is. And I'm really interested to kind of lay this out for folks and just try to see why you guys like there's one particular model of boots that I know you're going to say that for the life of me, I can't figure out why. So tell us what your favorite pair of boots is and why you like it.
Now I'm excited.
So the best boot on planet Earth is
boy.
a crispy Laponia.
Okay.
And it's like a 2-flex rating.
Yeah.
Like
it's like a flip-flop with laces.
Boot. It's amazing. It's amazing. What's so funny is for years I would wear more of a tennis shoe type boot, more like a Loa Zephyr or something like that.
Okay.
But it didn't have the stability and what I need. A tennis shoe isn't what I'm looking for,
Right.
And years later, after trying a lot of different boots, I was wearing the Crispy Nevada.
Yeah.
Like a nice leather boot that has a 3-flex rating, pretty stiff.
Ankle height. Yeah.
Yep. It's got some ankle support. It's a rugged boot. And it's a great boot. I love the boot, and it sort of shapes to your foot over time like leather does. It's kind of like a Kenetrek.
Yeah.
It reminds me of that boot, but it doesn't take as much wear in time as the Kenetrek.
Yeah.
I think because the Kenetrek leather is so thick,
yes,
full grain, and the Nevada is so much more supple that right away you can buy a brand new Nevada and be walking in it tomorrow, and it feels just beautiful. It takes a lot of work in time to get a Kenetrek to get comfortable.
Yep.
Those days where I was younger and we'd get boots when I was a kid, you'd have to wear them for months and months and months before the season so that, you could work them in.
Right.
Yep.
But you don't really have to do that today with a Crispy. I like that boot. But, Ryan was wearing the Laponia. I thought it was lame looking and also like a tennis shoe. And so I turned my nose up at it for quite a while. Finally, one time they're like, here, just take the boot, try it out. So I took it and I wore it, and I used it on a little bit of a hunt, like day hikes. And I'm like, it's okay. It's not very rugged, it's kind of a lighter boot. And then I kept going back to it. I'd hike the mountains in the Wasatch here behind where I live, and I'd hike and I'd throw 100 pounds in my backpack. I'd take the water cooler out of the mountain ops office and I'd throw it in my pack full of water plus weights from the gym, and I'd climb that mountain because I wanted it to be bulky and heavy. Yeah. And then I'd put those Laponias on and I'd test that, and I'd wear a Crispy Colorado on one foot that was super stiff, and I'd wear a Nevada on the other foot. I'd switch them up. I'd wear a Laponia and then I'd wear a Summit, and I just was wearing all the different models and putting them through their paces. And I kept going back to that Laponia. I'm like, shockingly, I can wear this all day. It's super comfortable. It's got more stability than I realized. I feel almost barefoot, but yet supported. And before you know it, 6 months later, I just can't get myself to put any other boot on my foot. Like, it is that comfortable all day long, every day.
Yeah.
And it is plenty stiff enough and rugged enough for the steep mountain hunts that we do. Now, I think I like a more minimalist shoe during the day. Like, I'll go barefoot a lot. I don't have a weak foot, but I feel like any other boot I put on my foot, I feel like it's just restricted, and I don't have my toes and everything doesn't move, and I can't use my athleticism, and I feel like I'm kind of in a ski boot that doesn't flex, and everything about it just bothers me. And the Laponia breathes really well, and I don't get foot fatigue and I don't get cramps. Now, when I cut, where I really liked it is when I took the sheep feet orthotic.
Yeah.
That was custom built for my foot, and I slipped that into the Laponia, because for a while there I was like, the Laponia is okay. I think what it was missing for me was just that little bit of a stiff footbed.
Yeah.
Just a little bit more. That came with the sheep feet. I throw that on there. My foot doesn't shift or slide. I lace it up. It's heavenly. I can wear it all day, every day. I never get that feeling like I got to get this boot off. I'm totally comfortable. It's like lightweight. I don't feel it. And then when you go back to another boot, you just wish you had the Laponia on. The whole time you're cursing that you chose not to wear the Laponia.
Come back to town and throw your Ariats on.
Yeah, so that's my take, and that's Ryan's take. And now, like Brad and a lot of us have now, I mean, it's like it takes a while for a guy to like switch his mind up and do it.
Yeah.
But once you've kind of really given it an honest try, man, it's hard to go back. Now, it has its drawbacks because the sole is so thin, which is great because it's supple, and you feel like your foot is this close to the ground, because it kind of is. Like it's right on the ground.
Yeah.
But the problem is it has no traction. So, I mean, it really has none. But I prefer using Catula microspikes for most everything. So if I'm on a flat trail and I'm just cruising,
yeah,
I don't care. Like, we might go a long way in on that trail. Then when we go on a steep hill, I just pull the microspikes out and I throw them on. They're much more effective for those slippery, muddy, wet, grassy hikes and climbs than it is to rely on any tread. I don't care how good the tread is on your boot. Those microspikes are better. So I'm like, well, if I'm going to wear the microspike anyway, why do I care if the sole is all that, has all that much tread, you know, for the way I run.
Makes
so I tend to
sense.
run the sheep feet orthotic, the Laponia, and a microspike.
Have they beefed up the tread on the new Laponia 2 model that they revamped last year?
They did. And it's ironic. I got a pair today.
Okay.
Actually, where only I have it, where they put a much, more intense tread on it for me to test. Right away, I'm wearing it and I'm going, it is much more beefy, much more aggressive, much better, more like some of the other boots I own. But I definitely don't feel that close moccasin feel to the ground anymore.
Yeah.
I lost that part, but it might be a good trade-off. I don't know.
Yeah.
So I'm going to run it on this bear hunt and see how it feels.
Right on.
The only other issue with the Laponia is it doesn't have the ABSS ankle bone support system. And so I actually run, I carry in my pack, they're here somewhere, the Sweeto Universal ankle brace. Been using those since I was in high school, and then later when I played some ball in college. It's much more supportive than any built-in boot support. And over the years, I found I enjoy and feel better in that than I do in a boot that without it, And the Laponia, the way the upper works, I can throw that ankle brace on, and I have my boots just a little bit sized up to accommodate for the brace and the sheep feet orthotic. So I'll throw that orthotic on there, put the brace on, mostly my left ankle, which is I wear it to prevent injury, not because I really need it. It feels fine, but the ligaments have been torn 3 times and I broke the ankle, and it just doesn't work very well.
Right.
So it can roll. It just rolls easy. Yeah. So I just put that brace on, and it never has roll. It will not roll.
And that's just on one foot?
Yep, typically. Yep,
Okay.
Just my left.
Yeah. Gotcha.
I'll bring the other one in my bag. And if we're packing out a heavy critter and it's nasty and it's dangerous, or I could get hurt.
Yeah.
Anytime we're carrying those heavy packs, I just throw it on.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Day-to-day hunting, when it's just your average climbs and all, I don't bother. But I'll lace up. I'll take the time to throw those braces on when it's time to pack heavy. And
Yeah.
I've been doing that the last 2 years, and it's my favorite setup. It's like layers. I can take the braces off and I get more breathability and it feels light, and I don't need it just for moving, just for day hunts with a 25-pound day kit while we leave our base camp intact and go for a bear.
Yeah.
I don't need it. So I'll often just leave them in my pack.
Yeah.
They don't weigh much. And then I'll break them out when I need them. The other thing that I use is, hang on.
Well, while he's finding that, a big reason for, I think we can probably say we've all been in a situation to need the ankle support.
Yeah.
Is when you're hiking through these mountain ranges. I mean, the shale rock that we have up here and the inconsistency of the terrain, especially in the areas that we hunt, you can step on a rock that you think is super solid and you'd never imagine it would move just under your own body weight, but you step on it and it just completely rolls over.
Okay.
I'll use these red band knee sleeves sometimes on certain trips, and we use them in CrossFit for heavy squats and whatnot. And wow, you get the right size and you try this out, you'd be shocked how much stability you have throwing these suckers on. And, again, it's one of those things where it's like, man, I hate packing something like this, but it makes such a difference. If you're sheep hunting and you got to come down those mountains, the ankle braces and the knee sleeves can save years of torn ligaments and things like that. It generates so much stability. And so for long-term longevity, for health, I'll throw absolutely. I wouldn't squat, 450 without the sleeves on. Why would I carry these heavy pound, I try to be very smart and careful about that.
For sure.
And it works. So I still like the other boot that's out, though. Have you looked? They have a new Brickstall.
I've looked at all of them. Yeah, I'm
Brickstall,
really excited
the new
about
one
that.
That has. I got the wide, the new. It's a size and a half up. I wore it. It's pretty nice. It's
Now,
got some updates.
Did you get the 3 Flex full synthetic one?
Yes.
Yeah, that's the one I was thinking you were going to look at. Just because you tend to like that softer boot, it's synthetic, it'll breathe real good, but it's got more of a sole than that Laponia does. I've been looking at that boot.
No, the Brickstall feels like a boot.
Yeah, it does.
Mountain boot.
Yeah,
and
I've spent a lot of miles in the old Brickstall SF, the old black and orange one. Sheep hunting. That was the pair of boots that I was wearing when I shot my ram in the fall of 21 on that solo hunt there, and real heavy pack out, a lot of miles, and north of that 120-pound range. And I really like that stiff, very little flex to it for that steep terrain, and that does have the ABBS support system in it. I really like that system a lot. Now I had an issue with that original Brickstall, and they've updated it since then. Last year, they came out with the Brickstall Pro in a 4 Flex, and now this year they updated the Pro again to a 5 Flex, and now that one is still a full leather nubuck outer leather boot. But
I saw that one today.
But the old Brickstall had a full neoprene tongue from the bottom all the way up to the top. And I had an issue with like glacial silt in all the creeks that I was crossing, getting in under that reverse lacing tongue and kind of jamming that silt rock up against the stitch where the neoprene tongue transitioned into leather. And it was pushing water through, and my boots would just leak like a sieve. And I got back off that sheep hunt, and I was so upset. I actually called up Crispy, and I ended up talking to Kendall. He was in the office that day, and we talked for quite a while. And I told him, I said, man, I love these boots. I wish they were a little bit taller, and I wish they didn't have a neoprene tongue on the bottom. He said, well, funny enough, I've gotten a few other complaints about that. Be watching for a change. And sure enough, last year they came out with the Brickstall Pro, which is a full 10-inch height, still leather, but now
Yep.
the bottom half of that tongue up to where your up to where your ankle starts up into your lower leg, the bottom of that tongue is now leather. So there's not that neoprene stitch seam that you can get leaks into. And now new for this year, they have a few different Brickstall. Do they call them the Mountain Brickstall? I think that's what they call that line. The MTN.
Terrible with names.
Possibly.
I saw the SF and I saw the Pro and I saw.
So now they have the Brickstall
Fully
synthetic options, and they make that. I think they're both full 10-inch options, but they make it in a 3 flex and a 5 flex, and the synthetic ones are completely non-insulated. Now, the Brickstall Pro is 200 milligrams insulation, which personally, for me, up here, even in August, I've experienced 6 inches of snow on opening day sheep season. I like 200 milligrams of insulation. That's really not all that much, but it's just enough to cut the edge wearing, you know, like a pair of darn tough socks. But like for super early August alpine blacktail deer hunts, which I'm not going to throw any spoilers out there, but that's in my future at some point. But for a hunt like that, where you're, 90+% you're not going to see snow on that down in the Southeast Islands down there on an alpine deer hunt. That's a hunt where I would want a non-insulated boot. And honestly, I will probably end up getting the 3 flexes, because I've run those 5 flexes like I mentioned before. But last year in the fall, I kind of experimented with a couple different pairs of boots. I tried out a pair of Kenetrex. And I did break them in. I did about 30 miles in them pre-season, which is, relatively speaking, not that much. But then after I got in the sheep mountains, and I was sheep hunting for almost the entire month of August with a few caribou hunts sprinkled in there as well. By the end of August, those Kenetrex were rolling over so easily. It's like that nice, stiff, new leather was just completely broke. And there was no lateral support. And that's where it really had that light bulb moment for me. Like, this is what Crispy is talking about with their ankle brace support system. And, I immediately regretted not having my Crispies with me. Yeah. And I've also got a pair of the Crispy Hunters, which are a phenomenal pair of boots. It's a real traditional, full leather boot, 10-inch tall, but it's a 3 flex. It's nice and flexible. I've used that a bunch on moose hunts as well.
Basically the Nevada, but with the
taller, yeah. And it's got a full rubber rand. I wouldn't hesitate to wear that on any hunt in Alaska ever. Yeah, that's a great do it all.
It's kind of your general purpose all around.
Yeah,
nice,
it's that classic leather boot. Yeah, yeah. And I've really come to like that full 10-inch height. I mean, just for jumping across creeks and just doing little crossings like that.
I agree.
With gators. That you might not think, well, 8 inches or 10 inches. That's a substantial difference. And for me,
it is.
I feel a lot more laterally stable with just a touch taller boot height. Yeah. I really like that 10-inch boot.
One thing that I find interesting, I learned this lesson the hard way. I got a pair of Colorados, which was like a crazy stiff boot.
Yeah.
I think it was a 5 flex. I was, Kendall wanted me to wear it. I'm like, okay, I'll try it out. It breathes. It was synthetic. It was stiff. And I put on those heavy packs and I was hiking up the hills. And I was wearing the Colorado on one foot and every other boot on the other foot. And the next day I'd switch for the Colorado on the left foot and I put a different boot on the right. And I was just testing, how do these compare day after day on an 8-mile, 7-mile jaunt up these steep hills. I left after a couple of weeks. I was like, I am so excited to use this Colorado. Man, there's no denying that when I'm coming up and down these hills, that I feel more stable and I'm less tired and da-da-da-da. I'm like, So then I went on a hunt with Ryan Lampert and we hunted bears with Lusk. I was with Lusk. Turned out to be one of the biggest mistakes I have made on a hunt, because it is true that when I'm on straight vertical, up and down like a sheep hunter, that those boots were a godsend.
Yeah.
But then when you're in sort of more mountain, like the country that we're in, where you got to hike on some level more level rolling stuff for like 8 miles to the next mountaintop, they were a nightmare.
Yeah.
They don't have the built-in rocker. They don't help propel you. They're stiffer. They don't really bend at all. And I was dying day after day on these long grinding hikes. And when I hit a hill, I was like, oh yes, I really appreciate this boot. But the flats were so brutal that I found that I would prefer having a little less comfort on the steeps so that I have a boot I could wear all day on a 10 or 15 mile, just kind of average ground type of hike. It's just not worth the stiffness. That's when I started to shift away from stiffer boots to see an experiment. And over time, I have found that I can deal with a flexible boot on steep, nasty country just fine. And the rest of the time I feel great. I feel the best. So, because it's always a give and take, right? You can have the stiff boot that sucks on the flats, or you can have the really, flexible boot that's not as good on the steeps.
Right.
I have found for me that the flexible boot is by far the most efficient boot for me across the board. At the end of the day, when I just judge based on performance, feel, fatigue, like how much I enjoy it, I just don't.
Well, so I was going to ask, since transitioning to the softer, more flexible boot, have you noticed any increase in, let's say, your muscle fatigue, your muscle development? Because the reason I ask is, my wife is she went to college for archaeology and anthropology and all of that. And so she is really into how the human body reacts to certain things. And traditionally speaking, back in the day, most human footwear was a softer form like that. It was just designed to keep rocks and sticks from breaking the skin. Everything else was fine. And your body is set up in such a way that your muscle development in certain areas, little muscles in your leg and everything like that, and your actual full support all the way through your lower back is set up for more of a barefoot style walking. And people in the last 100 years or so have started kind of moving into that stiffer boot mentality, the super dense, super thick stuff that doesn't allow your ankle to roll. It doesn't, it kind of gives you a lot more solid platform to sit on or to stand on. But that's actually, over the course of that time, affected people's development of their muscles as they're hiking, and they're finding that it's actually worse for your longevity. And so I was curious if moving from the stiffer boots to the softer, more flexible boots, if you had any kind of a noticeable difference there.
I mean, in my whole life, I went with pretty minimal shoes. Very, very. So I only started using a little bit of a stiffer boot at that one time. I mean, I've been using in Nevada, not a very stiff boot. That was the stiffest boot I had really gone with. One hunt, I tried the super stiff boot, and I'm like, never, ever, ever, ever again. So for me, but I know guys who live in those and love them. But I also know that they have Achilles pain, and they have plantar fasciitis and stuff like that. I do not have those problems. I think because, first of all, I've been standing at a desk for since 2008. I stand at a desk all day like I am right now. I rarely sit down. I'll be at the desk from 6 a.m. till 10 p.m. I'm always standing on my feet, usually barefoot, just on the carpet. So I can stand with the best of them. And I also think that the fact that I stand all day every day and it doesn't bother me whatsoever, because I built that conditioning up. Half the time, I think a guy doesn't handle the mountain hikes much because he's not used to just being load bearing on his feet for that many hours in a day, let alone the activity itself.
Right.
That's a good point.
So often I wonder, how come I can do all this stuff for so long on my feet? Well, because I'm on my feet 10 or 12 hours straight, just standing. Yeah, I'm not walking, but I'm load bearing on this frame all day, every day for 10 plus years.
Interesting.
So I think it's a lot more powerful than people think. And I think also that's one of the reasons why my feet aren't weak. You know, I'm standing here moving my toes. I will rock back and forth. I stretch my feet. I'm feeling the earth, you know, beneath these feet. I walk outside. I don't put shoes on and come back. You know, there's like I just try to do that. So Ryan has been the same forever. And so I think we both have really strong feet. My feet flex. The other thing too, I've been doing CrossFit for a long time. I do Olympic lifts. I do deep squats. I have a really deep and healthy and good squat. I have a lot of mobility in my ankles, a lot of mobility in my hips. It's not hard. I mean, it's not hard for me to go into a squat, on a hill even, and my ankle will bend in a way that most people don't have the mobility to do that. So when I climb a hill that's this steep, my foot is flat.
Yes. Yeah.
Right.
And my leg is up, and I'll climb flat. All these guys that like those stiff boots, they don't have that kind of mobility. So they're putting their toe in and they're climbing this hill like that.
Right.
And that's because they don't have the mobility and the strength and that range of motion to just climb comfortably that way.
Yeah.
And it can pull behind the knee and put some fatigue on the calf. And you start sidestepping a little bit and you change your technique on the climb to give you a little bit of break. But I don't need that stiff boot, and I don't climb on my toes.
No.
Nothing. I think it's totally inefficient. But most guys I go with, they climb on their toes the whole time. And I'm like, that'll fry you in no time.
I was just going to say that this last fall, I did something a little bit careless. I tried to take too much out in one load. A client had killed an animal, and there was a couple of us guides on the hunt, and I was going to take it back down to camp, and they were going to continue hunting. And I tried to take out a whole caribou in one load. And that's first and last time I'm ever going to try that. I got it all in my pack. It took me the better part of a minute to scramble up to my feet. It was challenging, to say the least. And I staggered up onto my trekking poles and was flexing them. And I thought I was going to break one of those and shove them through my face, and I was just going to be found there. But I finally got up to my feet, and it was all downhill. So I thought, well, hey, what the heck? It's just downhill. I'll just take it real easy. I'm not climbing with this. Because I in all reality, I really couldn't have climbed with it. There was no way I could have climbed with that.
Right.
But I started going downhill, and I was taking it real easy, and it's that soft, spongy ground. It wasn't wet, but it wasn't hard ground either. And I didn't have a real stiff pair of boots on. That wasn't the issue. I'm getting down through the hill, and I probably got about a half mile. And about the first quarter mile, I was hating my life. I thought, man, this is stupid. If I fall, I'm going to get hurt. And then I was only 3 weeks into the season, and I was going to be up there for 8 weeks. And I thought, man, I really should just drop this, take a couple of quarters out, and just make 2 trips. Why try to be macho about it? But my pride got the best of me, and I thought, no, I'll make it out in 1 trip. Well, it didn't happen. I got another quarter mile, made it about a half mile from the carcass, and I tripped on a root. I couldn't see it. My boot hooked on a root, and this is the one time I will say this. I wish I would have just gone down face first. I really wish I would have, but I didn't. It was kind of a steep drop. It was relatively rolling, but there's one spot I just kind of dropped down a little bit, and I slipped and fell, and I went straight down on my knees, and my heels came up to the small of my back, and I just buckled, and all of that weight on my pack just hyperextended the bend of both of my knees.
Yeah.
And I heard pop, pop. And I thought, yep, this is it. I did it. I'm done. I'm going to have to get flown out of here. My wife is going to get to see me real soon. I seriously, that's what came through my head. I thought, yep, I'm done. I just ruined both my knees. I'm 25 years old and I'm done. And I kind of rolled over, and of course at that point when I hit the ground, my pack pulled me over backwards. So now I'm kind of laying there, and I'm undoing my pack belt, and my chest rig handgun was up in my face, and I'm kind of scrambling, and And to my surprise, I just rolled over and stood right up. And there was no pain right away. Like I thought, well, maybe I just popped both of my knees. Maybe it's no big deal. And kind of rubbing them and squeezing them, and nothing was going on strange there. I didn't feel any pain right away. Of course, I immediately did what I should have done to begin with and took out 2 of the quarters and flagged the meat in a tree and continued on down to camp, finished the pack out. Well, the next morning I woke up, and I'm a side sleeper. And I woke up. I'd kind of tucked my knees up at an angle at kind of a bend when I slept that night. And I woke up and just went to kind of stretch out, and that's when it hit me. Yeah. I went to extend both of my knees out straight and just kind of just stretch. And as soon as my knees straightened out, it was just shooting pain in both my knees. And I did another sheep hunt that next week, and all through that sheep hunt, it was just constant knee pain. And every time I would kneel down after that, it was just immediate knee pain. And I struggled even wanting to go on that sheep hunt on that particular hunt, because I thought, I don't even know if I can do it physically. I don't know that I can complete this. I ended up going on it. It wasn't that difficult of a hunt, relatively speaking. It was a easier sheep hunt. But even with having my knees being injured, really, and I couldn't tell you what part of my knees that was, what I injured, because by the time season ended, 5 or 6 weeks later, they were fine, and I was relatively good again. But throughout the course of that next sheep hunt, for the next 2 weeks that I was in the mountains again, doing the heavy lifting, like you said, you're going in 80 pounds, and I'm carrying stuff for clients too. So I was not just carrying my own stuff. And, but even on that hunt, the difference in pressure and I should say, when I climb a mountain, I do the same thing that you're talking about. If I'm on a slope like this, my foot is flat up to that slope. Unless I have to toe pick to get onto a rock ledge or something, it's very uncommon that I'm a toe picker climbing anything. I really like that better grip and feel of just having my foot flat to the surface. I feel like I get a better grip that way. And it's just habit. I don't think I really thought about it until that particular hunt, when I started trying to toe pick, and the calf fatigue was immediate, but I noticed a difference in the strain on my knees. Like it was almost more of like a bouncing action of trying to spring yourself up, and you're trying to use your stiffer boot sole to kind of assist in that climb. And a lot of guys subscribe to that theory, but I found it more comfortable, even with, 2 bruised or, injured knees, still putting your foot sole flat on that, flat on the dirt or the rock or whatever, as long as it was doable, that was still perfectly comfortable for me.
Well, you got to think about how much less strain it's putting on your calves and your tendons and ligaments and everything when you are flat on the mountain like that. You're not suspending the rear part of your foot. So
I did a podcast some time ago called it was episode 719, How to Climb and Descend Steep Mountains.
Okay.
And here's the little cover image there.
Okay.
And in that, I basically walked people through, it's kind of broken up and covering little pieces, but I was coaching people on, technique, how to stand, how to do a one-legged squat, how to pivot and how the mobility matters and how you use your poles matters. And And this stuff is sort of, you kind of take for granted. You do it, you figure this stuff out, you learn maneuvers and everything. But it's not really that self-evident. And in the podcast, my dad has been having trouble. He's a little older now, and his knees are just not reliable.
Yeah.
But he started wearing these red band knee sleeves, And we got him sized right. And he was just walking with a pack with about 25 to 30 pounds in it, going on 2 mile hikes, 3 miles hikes. And at first, whenever he went, like any walking at all, and his knees would just swell up, you know? But then he started wearing the sleeves, and within like right away, he could walk. Right away, he could put on a mile or two and not have swelling. And with that little bit of support and the compression, he started to be able to put on 5 miles. Then when we went on our hunt, it was like 3 months later. The first day he hiked in 8 miles with like a 60-pound pack, and he's no spring chicken. We hunted and we drug him through the ringer, but it was amazing. Like, you add a little bit of support like that, especially like I said, you're carrying that ridiculously heavy load. It's amazing how much these knee sleeves give you that added support. Yeah. It's amazing.
Yeah.
You know, try them out. I think they're definitely worth it, but I talk about it in that podcast and it's pretty useful.
Yeah. No, I'm definitely going to have to go back and listen to that one tomorrow at work. I guess just to kind of wrap up the footwear situation that we were having here, I just have to say footwear is highly individualistic.
Oh, yes.
Some people, a lot of people love to ask the question, what's the best pair of boots? Well, what kind of feet do you have, man? Because you know what? Yeah. As much as I like and have come to like more that 3 flex or even a 2 flex boot, I'm definitely interested in trying something like the Laponia, but for me, that 3 flex at the most of 4 flex, and this is again, this is the crispy scale. I guess we haven't really prefaced that at all on the show yet. 1 being a flip flop, and 5 being like an ultra rigid mountain boot, right?
Yeah.
So 3 is the middle ground, and then 4 is on the stiffer side. That's generally where I fall, and I'm leaning more and more towards that 3 flex rating. But if somebody has an existing foot injury or ankle injury where they cannot use a nice soft boot like that, then maybe a 5 flex is the right boot for you. So
I also think that you can take a boot that's nice and you can add a sheep feet orthotic to it.
Yes.
Yeah.
And in my experience, and I like the single layer foam. I don't like the double.
Yeah.
I don't like too much padding. I don't think that's as helpful. It's hotter. For me, it's not. I love the single with the little heel thing on it.
Yep.
It has been amazing. I can slip that into a boot, and it takes a boot that's good and makes it so much better.
I agree.
So I think that's a big deal. I think that people are missing out on the fact that orthotic can really take whatever boot you own now and make it just a little bit better.
Yeah, I agree. I was going to say, even for my spring bear guiding, I'm in Extra Toughs all the time, and I take out my. I personally, I haven't tried the sheep feet orthotics yet. I just have a pair of super feet insoles with the plastic.
I use those for years.
The plastic back half. It's a nice rigid insole,
but it cups your heel and keeps your foot from sliding around in the boot and getting blisters.
It's really simple. You just go to your local, if you have a Sportsman's Warehouse, that's where I get mine. You just figure out what your arch is. I believe it or not, even from going barefoot most of my childhood years on concrete, growing up in Fiji, I was barefoot all the time, and I still have high arches. So I run the orange super feet. And even in like the spring bear guiding season, when I'm in Extra Toughs, I'll put those super feet in my Extra Tough boots.
Yeah.
And it, like you said, it makes them feel like a real high quality pair of boots. But
and I think it's important not to get your pride so high that you kind of avoid using any of these extra features.
Yeah.
A lot of guys don't want to admit they need knee sleeves. A lot of guys don't want to admit they need extra ankle support or arch support. But I mean, as you guys have pointed out so many times, the longevity it allows you. You're not just going to be able to get out there this season, but the next 10 seasons and still be healthy and still be building, still be growing. Yeah. That's really an invaluable thing. Yeah. I mean, and your pride's not worth it. I mean,
I agree. I agree.
Yeah.
Hey guys, if you've listened to the show for any amount of time, you've likely heard Dalton and I go back and forth about bullet construction and how I like rapid expanding bonded core bullets that leave massive wound channels. I've also stated I would never use a monolithic bullet. Well, I'm here to tell you about the company that finally changed my mind. Hammer Bullets produces what I would consider the most premium and best working monolithic bullets on the market today. These bullets are designed so that after penetrating the hide of an animal, the front half of the bullet explodes, shedding its petals and imparting massive damage to the vital areas while retaining the rear shank for maximum penetration, effectively closing the gap between lead core and monolithic construction. The guys at Hammer designed these bullets with 100% focus on how they perform once they reach their destination. But don't let that fool you. These bullets have amazing VCs and have specialized pressure grooves built in for amazing inherent accuracy. They have a minimum velocity rating of 1,800 feet per second, which allows for long-range shots but have no maximum velocity, making them perfect for every cartridge from your granddaddy's old 30-30 to the high-velocity rounds like the Weatherby 3378 without having to worry about your bullet failing. They've also recently partnered with Weatherby to provide factory ammunition for a multitude of cartridges. To view their expansive selection and find the perfect match for your hunting needs, go to hammerbullets.com to buy yours today and drop the hammer on your next adventure. I wanted to get into kind of the next level. You know, once you've got your feet figured out and you're in there, what do you use and what's your recommendation on like what your shelter and your sleep system setup is specifically for these spring bear hunts? Because springtime can present its own kind of new level of issues with the snow just melting away. So maybe there is snow in your area. Maybe there's a lot of melt off or you end up in things like that. What do you focus on primarily for your setup there?
We use primarily 2 shelters. We honestly we're at that point where if you use a shelter that's not floorless, you're a loser. And you're living in 1990 and you like MSR hubbas and stuff like that. Like I don't, or Hilleberg. It's like, what the hell is wrong with you? You like get up with the times. I see some finger pointing in here at Dalton.
That's me. I still run an MSR hubba 2-man with carbon pulse.
You're just a glutton for punishment. So here's the deal. Like people always ask, they're like, well, I can't imagine floorless. You know, the floorless is, I just don't get it, you know. The floorless is nothing. Like after you've used it enough, water doesn't come in, bugs aren't an issue. It's not this boogeyman that you think it is. It's really more practical across the board. You just don't need a floor. You just don't. You throw out some Tyvek or whatever your ground cloth is, you throw that down, you're good. And we have now the main reason why we run with floorless is for fire, for a stove.
Yeah.
And the life in the backcountry without a stove is just, we're done with that. Like that life is the past. I will not live back there without it. And it's funny because we were having this conversation with like Dustin Rowe the other day from Backcountry BC and beyond. And I see these guys still running these like tents and they're like, yeah, but we're hunting sheep and da-da-da. I'm like, I don't care. We set up these teepees on the tops of cliffs and in mountains and above alpine all the time. We put them in windstorms. Yes, you have to stake them down right. You have to use the right kind of stakes. You need to get all the guy lines tied down. Sometimes we actually rock them out. Most of the time we do, especially if we know there's a storm coming, which we would do with another tent anyway. And we will also even stack up a barricade or logs, but we'll drop an elevation 500 feet so that we can tuck out of a storm and set up down there. And then, you know what we'll do? There'll be wood there and then we'll burn it and it'll be warm and cozy all night long. And every bit of our gear will be dry. Like I don't get it. Like, honestly, it's just, I watched, my friends Tanis and Doran cross the river, get wet, boots got wet, set up this tent. There's wood around. They're going after a sheep, but they're not up there yet. They could have dried everything out right then and there. With a nice little wood stove, and the whole setup weighs less than their setup does.
Yeah.
So it's not a weight thing.
Right.
I don't get it.
I think
And
it's a big
after
part of it is familiarity. People haven't tried it, and they're afraid of a floorless. They're afraid of water coming in. They don't know how to do it.
Well, Chris, we hunted with Chris.
Yeah.
And Chris owned, he had never used a stove in all this time. And he went on, I'm like, Chris, if I'm going grizzly hunting in Alaska, I'm going with a stove. I am not. I am, okay, call me a diva, but I am over this whole cold camping bull. And so
suffer through the shivers.
So I showed up and I brought the teepee shelter, pitched the little carbon pole in the middle, got the stove going. We had fire every day. You know what Chris did after a week of that? Went and bought the whole kit, and he'll never go back. Never. It will always be fire all the time, all season long. Yeah. So it's really hard, even in September when we're hunting elk at this point. There have been times where we say, you know what, it's spring. The weather's been great. You know what we're going to do? We're just not going to pack the stove. And then we almost always get hit with some rain squall for 2 days. Everything gets soaking wet, or you fall in the river as you're crossing it, which is going to happen sometimes in a little boat. And now what? Now you got a full grain leather boot that is going to take forever to dry?
Yeah.
No, not when you have a teepee. You just get it warm inside, and I have a little Graxaw boot dryer that plugs into my dark energy, like whatever the battery pack is. Yeah. Little airflow. My boots are dry within half hour or so. Mm-hmm. In late season, it's a no-brainer to bring a stove.
Yeah.
Just because your boots get a little wet on the outside, they'll even freeze like a rock.
Yep.
When I put my boots on every morning, when it's like 10 degrees outside, that's after they've been warmed up by my warm stove and the little fan is blowing them dry. And I put on a hot, supple boot as if I was leaving my house. And when I walk outside, my feet are warm and my boots just move. It's just beautiful. Leather's supple.
So over the last, I think over the last year or so, when Graxaw came out with those ultralight boot dryer fans, I had those guiding last fall. I bought those.
Oh,
that was, and this is, I do not have a heated shelter such as yourself in all your glory.
Yes,
but even without a heat source in my tent, just getting that airflow, and even on hunts where I didn't step in water and go over my boot tops, even when they weren't wet from water, you sweat a copious amount throughout the course of a hunt. People have no idea. You can sweat up to a liter of water a day out of your feet.
Yeah, right. And it's going into that boot. There's nowhere for it to go.
Exactly. And even on a nice synthetic boot, you still have moisture that gets retained in there. And so what I did all fall long, every couple of days, I would sacrifice a little bit of battery life from my chargers and just run those boot dryers for a couple hours and a couple times all the way through the night. I mean, if I had a couple of good days of sunshine and I wasn't worried about burning on my battery banks and not having solar to retop it off, then I would just run those boot dryers all night long. I tell you what, that was the most popular item in camp. Everybody was asking me that heard about them. Hey, I heard you have boot dryers. I said, yeah. And you know how much they weigh? And I would throw them. I had them in a little tiny Sea to Summit dry bag, sil nylon dry bag. And I had taken an old Thermarest, a folding half. So I put the boot dryers in this little foam case, if you will. Yeah. Slid them in the dry bag so that my electronic USB port never got wet and they were protected so that I can just mash them into my pack wherever, right? So I would just throw them that dry bag and they'd say, well, there's nothing in here. I said, open it up. And they would pull out these little boot dryers connected by a USB cord. And they're like, no way. And I'm telling, and everybody was wanting to see those that heard about them. I mean, they are a phenomenal piece of kit.
They really are. They change how comfortable you can be back there. And the shelters, the big thing for a long time was teepees blow down in the wind. Yeah. You know, they're not freestanding. They've got this issue. They got that issue. But the way that they are designed today, like the Peaks teepee, we've put it in some places. we have yet to lose one. We have yet to have one pop off and blow away. We have yet to have one. And think about where Ryan and I, how we hunt.
Oh yeah.
All year round and all the conditions we hunt in. And we do not hunt with anything but a floorless teepee.
Yeah.
So if we can pull it off in every hunt we do, no one's doing stuff more. I suppose there are some sheep hunters that are truly up on the tippy top of some places.
Yeah.
Where I could see the, the floored dome shelter, Hilleberg style type tent has its use. However, fine, I can concede that you could go up there, you could set up your dome. It probably could perform a little better than the teepee design, although the teepee design in the peaks with the cross member trekkers that go through the top, which stiffen the top and you tack it down, it is taut. It takes a beating, and we put it in the high wind tunnels and all that, and we've been able to keep it standing. So I'm not convinced that the other type of shelter really is needed, but I don't want to send some sheep guy up there and then find out I'm dead wrong. I haven't tested it in that exact scenario.
Right.
But in all the scenarios that I have done, and we hunt in some tippy top of some mountain places, and Ryan always wants to hunt on the windiest, nastiest ridge in the wide open where you're sitting duck and the storm comes and you think you're going to die. And every time we don't.
Yeah.
So it just keeps holding up time after time. But I still, in that situation, I still would bring the teepee and the stove. One guy would bring it.
Mm-hmm.
It's invaluable. It's indispensable. You can't leave it behind because inevitably you got to drop down into the timberline. There's wood there. You can warm up. It's there for emergencies. It's there for 3 days of being stormed out. It's there for recovery, for getting your gear in order.
Yeah.
It's just too useful. So sure, bring the dome, but don't leave the teepee. The teepee is 1.5 pounds and the stove is 2 pounds.
Yeah.
Between two guys, you're talking about a 3.5 pound rig for two dudes. You split that up, you're sub 2 pounds each.
Yeah.
Like, how can you justify leaving it behind given the power of what it is, especially as you're in those rainy, nasty, or wet or cold conditions? It just changes everything. And Tobias, he's just like, hell yeah, I got he brings the big mama stoves. Like he goes like full hot, like more fire, more power, and just carries that weight. And we found ourselves doing that more and more too, because it's just a little bit more in ounces with that powerhouse furnace. And there you have it. And it's just so much easier to hunt and recover, keep your gear. You need that ambient heat just all around you. Yeah. And we sleep better too. Oh, yeah. You can get all that condensation off of you and all that every day. You're bone dry, your bag dries out. I remember being in New Zealand in a nasty, nasty place. And we went up to the top and we set up and all of that. And our gear kept getting wetter and wetter and wetter, and we didn't have a stove to burn any wood. And I remember thinking to myself, this is one of the biggest mistakes we've ever made on a hunt, because my bag is now pretty much flat from the ankles down, and I cannot seem to get it to dry out any way, no how. And it's really cold. I'm miserable. And what would have just a little wood stove, had we packed that 1.5 pounds or 2 pounds, would have solved so many problems with the whole hunt. So that's my thing. Floorless teepees. Now, some of the places we hunt are steep like this. And in that case, we use a trucking pole, a solo shelter design. I like the Seek Outside Silex. With a wood stove box, do a medium or large. Don't use the cub. It's like a cracker box this big. It's annoyingly small. Use a real stove. Use the bigger size up. Yeah. But that Silex, it's legit. It's like $200. It's not very expensive. You can set it up with your trekking poles, throw that little titanium stove under there. It's super lightweight, and you can pitch it right over a deer bed.
Yeah.
Somewhere around episode 715 to 725 in there, we did some shelter breakdowns, and we showed you some setting that shelter up on some just steep spots. You just kick out a deer bed, pop it there.
Yeah.
And boom, you're in those hills, and you can still run the stove too.
Right.
So, but it's floorless, man. We're all in on the floorless.
So talk about your ground cloth options for folks that might not, folks that might be listening and think, well, what keeps your sleeping bag from getting wet? So talk about that a little bit.
So it's funny, like as long as you don't set your tent up where it floods, you won't really get water underneath it. Okay.
That makes
I mean,
sense.
that's as simple as it is. Like when, what people think is water's going to come in underneath. That's the big thing. How do you keep water from coming in? It's not like that. I mean, you set the teepee up, the rain comes pouring down, and I'm talking for days.
Yeah.
The water just goes outside. It doesn't flow back under. Just like if you're under a tree and the water's just coming down and stuff, and then it's dry right around the tree, it doesn't roll back under. Now, if you're set up in an area where there's excess water, like I did in Southeast Alaska, up in the Alpine, I mean, we set that thing up and it flooded. Underneath this mountain hardware tent, there was like this much water flowing. It was like a waterbed. And we stayed dry in there. And a floorless shelter would have been a nightmare.
Yeah.
Would have been a nightmare. But that's not where I would set that thing up. I would never have even thought about putting it there. I would have put it somewhere else where when that rain does come, and you can look, it's like, this is high ground, this is dry ground, this sheds water. So you have to be a little bit better. Definitely up where you guys are, it can be more challenging setting up in a way that the water doesn't get in, because you have a lot more water than we do down here typically. But like I hunted grizz there in June, and I hunted grizz there in August, and we got enough rain to choke a horse, and especially in August. Yeah. And the rivers were flooding, and it was a lot of wet.
Yeah.
We were bone dry.
Yeah.
We could set up. The water didn't come underneath. So typically what I like is just that $20 Tyvek ground cloth that you buy like on, Amazon or something. Nothing fancy. I've tried a lot of different options, but Tyvek is fairly puncture resistant.
Yes.
You need something puncture resistant and water resistant.
Right.
So Tyvek works great. If you have a sort of a washing machine where you can break it down, that's nice. You can take that crackly loud Tyvek, throw it in the washing machine, turn it on, let it do its cycle, do that 2 or 3 times, pull it out and just let it air dry. And you have a pretty supple Tyvek at that point that retains that waterproofness and retains that puncture resistant nature. And it's typically 4 feet wide by 7 feet long or 8 feet or something. Yeah. And Ryan and I just lay them out, and you lay on top of that. Yeah. And what that does though, is it allows you to have your stove burn, and you don't have to worry about the floor. Now Peaks, because Bryce, the owner of Peaks, can't wrap his mind around a floorless shelter. But Ryan and I have told him, you must have one. Sorry. and he has trusted our opinion, but yet he built a floor for it. So you can get it, but it has a floor too. Yeah. And I got to admit, it's sexy, because you just stick it on the ground and the footprint's perfect. And then you just hook up your tassels, to the shelter itself, and it kind of folds inside, so it feels like a little tub, little floor. Right. And then where the stove goes, you just have a little zip, and you can remove that little patch. The stove goes there, and now you're pretty much floored except for where the stove is sitting. Gotcha. So you don't melt or burn the ground, and now you have a shelter that's floored with a stove for sissies. So you can get that if you want to.
Or for people that hunt in wetter environments.
Yeah.
True.
And that's the thing is, I know that a lot of the holdback of people I've talked to locally that are kind of going back and forth on whether they should do it or not is because up here, it's not necessarily water flowing underneath that you're wondering
It's
about.
water that comes up from underneath.
We have a lot of that just saturated tundra here. And so the fear or the holdback is that going with a floorless will then limit your campsite ability. So if you're out somewhere, you have to be a lot more picky about where you can stop.
I can't tell you.
When we floated and we hunted that spot, we hunted up and down with the caribou and the moose. We're in this, we're dealing with those conditions you're talking about. It's fine. It's totally fine.
Yeah.
We could find a swampy spot that was relatively, up and above ground. And you lay on it, it's like, ooh, this is a little squishy.
Yeah.
But when we're floating like that, we brought cots. We brought those Helinox.
Yeah.
Cots.
Helinox. Yeah.
Oh man, that was heaven. Now, if you have to backpack in, then maybe not, but it was sure nice on the float to have those.
Yeah.
It's definitely you have to think a little bit ahead on how and where you're going to set it up. There's no question.
Right.
You have to adapt the piece of equipment to the situation.
Yeah.
But we have been able to do it in every single circumstance on every hunt. This is not a deal breaker. And the benefits of having the fire far outweigh the inconvenience of the spongy ground that you have to deal with and work around.
Right.
You just have to use it a lot, get skilled with it, know more about it. You will never go back. You just won't go back.
It sounds like Seek Outside solved the problem for us with the spot for the stove in the middle. I'm sorry, I still don't buy the floorless. Like I have looked up and listened to your podcasts and watched your videos about it and heard you, and I could see it. There's parts that I hunt, places I hunt, I could see using it, but there's a lot of places I hunt that if I find a flat piece of ground, there's going to be tundra, and if it's been raining for even a day, I'm not going to find a spot where I can put my sleeping bag on the ground, even with a floor mat, and not be fairly confident I'm going to get.
I can't tell you how many times I've taken down my tent, and in the footprint of the tent, I pick it up. And by the way, this is my MSR Hubba Hubba that you were talking about earlier. And, full on tub tent on the bottom that doesn't let water get in. And inevitably you take the tent out, and there's a whole puddle underneath the tent. Like you can put your foot down there, and the water just comes burbling up.
You're
next
right.
to you.
Mo, you're absolutely right. There are situations like what you're describing. If you're in some place like that, I could see where you'd have to hike pretty far or really settle on a different spot to be able
north of the Brooks.
Well, there's not a whole lot of hunting north of the Brooks. There's a little bit.
I don't know, man.
There's a lot of caribou, grizzly, moose. There's a lot up there.
Yeah. There's not much moose north of the Brooks, though.
There's not a lot of moose, but there's some.
I would say, I really think that you could find, like we always do, a place to pitch it, and it's worth the hassle.
I've been listening to a lot of it, and I'm pretty well sold on the idea. I think I'm going to try it this year.
As you've been talking, I've been kind of mentally going through all of my different spots that I've hunted.
Yeah.
And honestly, there are probably only 2 or 3 places that I've been that I do not think I could have found a better spot. Everywhere else, even if I did camp in a wet, mud pit, in my dome tent, most of the places I could have just been more particular about it and just picked a better spot to put the tarp.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, to put a teepee if I had that teepee style shelter.
Okay.
Yeah.
You know what else too? Like some guys do. When we were in the snow, we just pitched the teepee on top of the snow. But as the fire burns, it sinks, right? And so you tend to dig it out till you get to some hard pack, and then you deadfall the, what do you call it? Dead stake. what am I thinking of the word? When you take the steaks and you bury them in the snow.
Oh, yeah.
Because you're not going to be able to dig them. You turn them sideways, bury them in the snow, step on them, whatever. And then you can just jack the pole up to sort of put it more taut or less taut. Right. And then we used a cookie sheet, and you set the stove on this big giant metal cookie sheet, aluminum, and it keeps the snow from under the cookie sheet. It reflects the heat, and it doesn't really get hot or melt under there.
Interesting.
And the pole is there too. So the pole stays and the outside stays, but the center starts to sink a little. Pretty soon, when you go inside of it, it's like a staircase into it. And now you're standing in there, and every day you're shoveling a little more snow, and it gets to be a giant castle. It's pretty sweet. But you figure out ways to leverage the system.
Yeah.
The other thing that I've seen guys do is they do make, I think Hughes might have I think it has a floor where you see these dome tents. Didn't Barney's have something? Dome tents that have stove jacks and floors. Yep. I think that's what we had in Kodiak when I was hunting with Cole.
Yep. The old
Cole had.
It's called a bomb shelter.
Yeah. I don't remember if he just bought a tent and then had someone custom build a stove jack for it, or if it came with it. I don't recall.
The Arctic ovens do too, but those aren't those are a heavy, like you're sledding or riding in if you take that.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. But what I'm getting at is they had a floored shelter like Kuyu's, basically. But you throw a sheet cake or a pan there or whatever, you can have the floor if you want and still have the stove as well.
Right.
Yeah.
I just don't think you need it. Like I said, that Peaks floor, the Peaks Solitude floor, it's like another 10 ounces or something for that.
Yeah.
So it adds a few more ounces than a Tyvek sheet does.
Right.
Not very much, but it does keep that water from coming in through the bottom there. Yeah. And you can zip away that spot for just the stove. Right. And it could work for a more wet environment like what you're describing. But at this point, I'm watching guides and outfitters, I'm watching Dustin's crew, and I'm thinking, there's no way the reluctance. It's like when people are like, I don't want to get a smartphone. It's too complicated. And they stick with a flip phone.
Right.
That's what I feel like when I watch all these people.
Check this out. Best of both worlds. Right there, yeah.
The flip smartphone.
But you know what I mean, right? Like that's what I'm trying to say. Like it's definitely get one and get skilled with it and then decide, this just doesn't work for this area. But I think you'll find that 90% of your hunts, or if not all, you're going to go, it's like you'll never go back.
Okay.
Yeah.
Circling back to the Tyvek for just a second. Now, when you say Tyvek, do you mean the roll of Tyvek house wrap I can go buy at Home Depot?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
Say we make we buy a product for wrapping sheet metal with where I work.
Just cut a little piece out. And it's actually
a lot better and stronger than Tyvek, but about the same weight. It's quite a bit heavier duty because we'll wrap stuff with it. And Tyvek can tear pretty easy, at least what I've been familiar with, compared to the stuff we have anyway. I know my boss would let me cut a piece of that off for free. So,
well, absolutely,
cut 3 off.
Works.
We call it Alaskan sighting.
Yeah, they have different. Well, they have different grades of Tyvek, but it's basically house wrap, and depending on what you're getting, they'll sell those ones with grommets built in. You can like stake them down, but they're no good because they'll just rip out. Take nothing.
Yeah.
So, okay.
Yeah.
Well, I think that pretty well covered shelter. Just a quick touch on your sleeping bag. I know kind of the direction you're going to go with this. I'm really curious which bag flattened out on you in that New Zealand situation. I think I already know the answer, but I'd like to hear what you have, what you've gone to back and forth with the sleeping bag realm and where you're kind of sitting at right now.
It's so funny because you have, like we talk about boots and people's opinions and stuff like that. And so what one man says is great, another says sucks. And that's the situation with Ryan and I.
Yeah.
Ryan will say, this is the world's greatest sleeping bag. And I'll say, no, it's not. That thing is so subpar. It's ridiculous. And so it's just one of those things where I will tell you what my opinions are, but like boots, I think I'm right. Okay.
Yeah.
But I know enough to realize that Ryan thinks he's right. And so I'm just going to tell you, he loves that and has loved that Chilkoot sleeping bag from Stone Glacier.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
He's really appreciated it. He found a lot of value in it. He's like, it works great. And when I said the bag sucks, and when I said I like the Western Mountaineering Badger way more for a million reasons, he's like, you're crazy. He was vehemently upset with the fact that I completely disagreed with him. He thinks I'm crazy. How can you say that? And he's like sending me pictures and videos of him testing the bag underwater. And I'm like, look, dude, I don't get cold and it doesn't go flat, and the Chilkoot does. So I don't know what to tell you.
So was the Chilkoot the one that flattened out in New Zealand?
Yes.
Interesting.
Yep. And my issue there with that is this. I think Ryan, we are so different body wise.
Yeah.
I mean, across the board.
Yeah.
I'm much more handsome and stuff like that too. But when you just look at, like, when it's cold, when it's really cold outside, the man is resilient. His feet don't get cold like normal people's feet. You know, he's kind of a northern hemisphere kind of genetic person.
Yeah.
You put him in 70 degrees and he turns purple. He hyperventilates. He's dying of heat exhaustion. He's crawling under a tree. He acts like he's going to die. You know, I mean, and me, on the other hand, you can put me in the boiling sun and I feel fine. I am so warm and cozy. The hotter, it can burn my skin. It never bought. I'm fine. I love it. And so, given the fact that we obviously have different body responses, he handles the cold much better than and I handle the hot way better than him. And when we did CrossFit workouts, we go to the gym. When it was 110 degrees, 105 degrees, and everybody's working out outside, I would kill. I would dominate. I would sling weights around, run, climb the rope, and I'm just like sweating, and I'm like, I'm supercharged in this temperature.
Yeah.
And everyone else would just drop like flies. And they'd complain about the heat. Then when the winter came and the workout would start out at like 6 a.m. and I'd show up, and it's not really a heated building. That's the whole, and I couldn't lift half the weight I could normally lift. I had no drive, no desire to exercise. I'd get through the workouts. I'd be cold during the work, piss me off, the whole thing. I wanted to quit. And Ryan is the opposite, the total opposite. So given that, he doesn't get cold in his sleep. He's not a cold sleeper. So when he gets in his bag and he goes to bed, he's not a cold sleeper. I get in the bag and I swear my temperature drops another 10 degrees. And like, I swear the blood to my feet just stops going. It's just like, I'm just colder. So, and I have a really low pulse, like I'm dead pulse. So, I lay there and it'll, when I go to sleep and I'm relaxed, it'll pump. And then the heart won't pump again quite a while. And so the rate is slow and the pulse is slow, which is usually hypothyroidism or something like that. And, they'll be worried about, do you pass out after you do a heavy squat? Do you not have enough blood pressure? So, but no, I don't have any of that. It's just genetic. I'm like that. My dad's like that. My brother's, some people are just genetically like that. So I have a really, really slow heart rate and a really, really low pulse, which I think contributes to, when I'm not moving, extremities getting cold pretty quickly.
Okay.
And that's just me. So the Badger, whatever reason, the Western Mountaineering Badger, it's the same degree. It's like a 15-degree bag, I believe, as the Chilkoot.
Right.
Yet the foot box, the way the feathers are, where they're positioned, I think it's just better designed. They have the feathers in the right spot. I don't feel like I have any dead spots. my feet stay warm. My body stays warm in the bag. I like the zipper. It doesn't get caught the same way because it's got the engineered flap there that makes it easy to zip and unzip.
Yeah.
So I like the exterior shell. That might weigh a touch more. I don't know. But the cut is 1,000 times better. The Chilkoot has you might as well stand. I'm kind of bow-legged. Put my feet together and then tie a rope around my knees. Like that's what I feel like when I'm in the Chilkoot. I cannot spread my legs.
Yeah.
And my man parts need to breathe or I get angry.
Yes.
And so I can spread my legs quite a bit and feel comfortable with the Chilkoot, the foot box, the foot box all the way to about where your knees are like the same width. It's not tapered. It's just like a tube. Yeah. And then it tapers after that.
Yeah.
Well, when you're shaped like me, I mean, it doesn't matter if from the knees, from the thigh up, it's super open.
Yeah.
Because I can't spread my legs still because the foot box is this wide.
Right.
And so for me, the cut was a problem too.
Yeah. Yeah. Last year in my fall guiding season, I did run the Western Mountaineering Apache 15. That was a great bag. It doesn't weigh, I think it's 2 pounds and change. It's super, super light, very, very packable. That did a great job. And I used it all of August and a little bit into September. By the time September came around, I wasn't doing the backpack hunts. It was all just kind of based out of a spike camp. And it wasn't like a mobile type of a hunt. And so as September came and up in that part of the state, we were getting approaching wintertime a lot sooner than we are in our hometown here in the central part of the state. And so I actually switched to my 20 below zero Wiggies bag. But again, I didn't have to worry about weight. I'm not packing the stupid thing. Right. So why wouldn't I bring my basically comforter / sleeping bag?
Totally.
And I can sleep in my, undergarments and just, completely be comfortable. I don't have to sleep in any of my layers. But that 15 degree Western Mountaineering bag, I was very hesitant to use that because number one, it's not treated down. It's just natural down. And there is a theory that I was not aware of until last year when I was shopping for sleeping bags about this treated down and how it is affected by repeated packing and unpacking and packing and unpacking. And that treatment that is applied to the down feathers inside that bag has the potential to have those feathers stick over time.
Yep.
And it's not clumping necessarily, but then when it does get wet, it clumps a lot faster. And it affects the longevity of the bag. So over time, without tedious care, and again, this is not every treated down bag on the market because there are a lot of them now. A lot of companies out there that have down products make a down sleeping bag. And they love to advertise that their down is treated down. And everybody does the little cup of water test where they pull out a handful of feathers. They have a little plunger. They push it down in there and it pops back up. Okay, that's a 5-second test. That's not a field example.
Right.
Dalton, it also
get this thing soaked.
Like you said, a field example. That's really what I want because it's a system.
Right.
It's how you've put the feathers in. It's the type of material on the outside of the feathers. Right. It's the shape, the cut, where the warm pockets are supposed to be versus not, whether the feathers stay lofty over time versus not. Like to take that little thing and say, this is superior because it's made with this. It's the whole system. You're not testing the system. You're testing the sliver. So for me, I hate those kind of tests. They're pointless.
I agree. I agree. But so over the course of that August season, 2 full sheep hunts and several caribou in between, off and on. And then the beginning of September when I used it. Never had the bag go flat. And a couple of times I climbed into that bag wet. and I never had an issue with it. And I was really hesitant to bring a down bag for a scenario like that. And of course, this is another reason why having a heat source in your teepee tent is of great benefit, because in the event that you do get your down sleeping bag a little bit wet, you have the ability to dry it out. But even when I got mine a little bit wet, it was never a problem. It always dried out. It was never a big deal. Now, the other thing I mentioned earlier about your feet being able to sweat a copious amount of moisture out of your body. So a lot of folks love to sleep barefoot in their sleeping bags. It's a comfort thing. It just feels nice to get out of your sweaty socks. They just, put their socks inside their sleeping bag to kind of dry out from their body heat over the course of the night, which is not a problem. But if you have your feet that are wet and clammy and you're still going to sweat at night, oftentimes guys are sleeping. I know usually in August, even if it's a nice warm day, I'll usually sleep in like a merino shirt and my merino bottoms. I don't particularly care for that feeling of skin next to a sleeping bag. I feel like I'm sweating even if I'm not.
Yeah, I agree.
I just don't like that feeling. So I sleep with like a thin merino wool layer on. But then if I've noticed that if I go barefoot, I'll wake up in the morning and the bottom of my bag feels damp. So something I did this last fall, and I don't know if you've tried this before. Tell me if you have. They make Gore-Tex lined socks. And there's a couple different brands that they make. I heard this, I believe Barklow had one of his winter camping videos out some time ago. And I saw this, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that's where I heard this from. But I bought a pair of those socks, and they're not cheap. They're like $60 for a pair of socks, okay? And I bought one at a local mountaineering store this last summer before I went out to start the season last fall. And I would sleep in those socks. After a day in the hills, pounding out miles, you get in your bag, you rip off your sweaty, saturated socks. Your feet are just wet and clammy. And I would just pull those socks on, and they're waterproof, but they're breathable. It's like a Gore-Tex liner.
Yeah.
And the whole idea is that you don't get moisture directly transmitted into your bag in liquid form. So you don't get a wet spot in the foot box of your bag.
Right. It's already kind of vapored by the time it gets
It's evaporating through your socks so that you're not getting the moisture transfer. And that works wonders. And it's really handy to have a waterproof pair of socks if nature calls in the middle of the night. You can just get up, step outside your tent, and stand in the grass and, answer the call, and you get back in your bag, wipe off your sock, and you're good to go. But that is a really, really good trick. I had never heard of it before until last summer, and it works like a charm for not getting that foot box wet.
Ryan and I are like two homeless guys. So it would literally like all that thing you described, we just climb in bed and go to sleep with our pants on and our socks and everything. And I just check for ticks, just showing my ass. Do I have one here? And then I climb in the bag. I really, I will say this. I don't like barefoot, and I don't like my legs uncovered because you get sticky and grimy. And I cannot sleep. If my skin touches my skin, I have to have something in between. So typically, like, I'll be wearing those Kuyu Katana or like Apex pant from Sitco or something, whatever I'm wearing.
Right.
Sometimes a Piranha, and I will basically climb in my sleeping bag. And I wear the Smart Wool Zero Cushion Classic sock, which is just like a liner. It's a thin black liner that's 100% merino, or not 100, but it's real close. I've tried lots of other liners, but that little tiny black liner is the best. And I can wear that thing for 6-7 days of pretty heavy hiking. I'll bring 2 liners usually, and 3 or 4 days in, I might switch the liner, but I'll wear the same darn tough for 12 days in a row over that liner.
Yeah.
When I go to bed at night, I typically slip off the darn and just let them kind of float in the bag somewhere.
Yeah.
But I'll keep the Smart Wool liner on. So my feet they wick away moisture. They're merino. They withstand scent and all that kind of stuff fairly well. And I'll just keep my pants on and I'll just sleep.
Yeah.
Just like that. And the last little bit though, I've been bringing some merino long john boxers that come down to my knee, just like shorts.
Okay.
And those have been handy because sometimes you fall in a creek, you get your pants soaking wet, or just something goes south, and I'm able to take my wet pants off and hang them. That Peaks teepee has the cross pole design in the top.
Yep.
Man, I can just hang my wet pants over that, my wet socks up in the rafters, the rafters up there.
Right.
The stove will be going. I go to sleep and I'm sleeping in my pants. And I pretty much sleep in my pants because I want them nice and dry in the morning. Yeah. Because of the fibers that we're using, like the katana, like I can wear those every day for 3 weeks and it doesn't bother me. Mm-hmm. They dry out within a little bit of time in my bag that night. The next day, if there's any moisture on them at all, they seem to not get funky and gross and nasty down there. I found it, so we just wear our pants to bed. Yeah, like long johns or something. That's just too much work. Let's put on pajamas and stuff like that. It's like right. It. I mean, that's if I take my socks off at all. Yeah. It's pretty, we're pretty lazy about that. Well,
you're just basically going straight from the binoculars straight into the sleeping bag. And then you're just off in the la la land.
I do a tick check.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah.
Right.
So
I do a check.
So we don't have ticks up here.
No,
I'm sure you know
that's
that.
God's country.
We do.
Right there.
Have you ever found a tick on you?
Not on me, but I found them on some animals.
Yeah.
You don't have ticks by the hundreds by the hour.
No.
No.
We don't have like ticks bad enough where I got to show my hunting part or my posterior at night and say, "Here, check me out."
That's right. We're plagued. It's a lot of ticks. Yeah. And it's funny. It's secret. Here's the thing. There's no question that probably, I'm not very shy, and I classify myself as shameless. And so, I'm like, I want to make sure there's no ticks.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And sometimes I'm not in the mood to walk, 40 feet away. So nobody, it's like, turn around or look at me. I don't give a damn. And I am buck naked, and I'll stand by the fire and I'll be like checking every groove.
Yeah.
In the full buck. And Brian will, pretend like I'm not there. And what's so funny is, and I don't really care, I have never seen Ryan skin above his elbow. Mm-hmm. And I've seen from here down his face and his ankles. Like I've never seen any other part of his body.
Well,
the man is private.
He just doesn't care. Maybe he's of the opinion that if the ticks are there, then they've earned it. Maybe he's just trying to.
He's uncanny. He does checks, but he for some reason the hair on his body, they go right here behind his ear. Every single time, 100% of the time, he never finds them. They always migrate to this spot, and he just picks them off.
Weird.
All day.
Interesting. Yeah. See why that
I'll get him taken up shop somewhere. So I have to, I'm checking all the little spots. But
yeah, we had a lot of them growing up in Kansas, so I'm well familiar with all the different places ticks can get into.
But I will like rolling if it's a wettish. We try to use the fire if we pack the stove, which is 99% of the time. We try to start a fire unless it's really warm outside. We'll start a fire just for the enjoyment of it.
Mm-hmm.
Just throw in some wood, get a little fire going. It's 60, 70 degrees in the teepee. You dry out if there's any dampness from sweat or whatever. All those wool layers that we run, typically in a little bit of heat in there, they clean up their own just because of the natural fiber that it is. And then
Yeah.
when you're a little bit dry, you've had some dinner out of a freeze-dried meal, then you just tuck in and fall asleep and the fire burns out and everything seems clean and dry. And there is no, that's kind of how we roll, and then get up in the next morning and just roll. We don't, I do like the comfort of a sleeping bag liner, but I'm not going to pack it.
Yeah.
I do like the comfort of long johns, but I'm not going to pack it. You know, I do like those things. I'm just not going to pack it.
That's that weight to convenience ratio thing. Yeah. Well, right on. Man, this is not approaching our quite longest one, but it's getting there.
Yeah.
Or what?
Should we wrap up? I mean, it is after midnight over here.
I was gonna say it's after 10 our time.
We're probably keeping you up from your bedtime. So
Well, hey man, we really appreciate you coming on and sharing your knowledge and kind of helping everybody out.
This has been great. You
know, with Spring Bear coming up, I mean, this is all great stuff for people to know, and I know I'm super excited to get out there. I can't wait, man. This is just watch it. It's hard when it's snowing outside right now.
Yeah.
But it's
it
should be illegal for it to get up to like 45 degrees and then drop back down to 0 and snow.
Yeah. It's been 10 below here in the mornings for the last several days straight. So I'm kind of over it already.
It's messing with our emotions, but
well, I guess just to wrap up, while you're on your hunt, you need to be protecting your rifle and your posterior that we talked about.
That's right.
With the Stealthy Hunter rifle cover and glassing pad that will cover your seat and protect you from the elements, and will protect your rifle from the elements as well. It'll cover up your scope and your action and the end of your barrel, so that if you do end up being fortunate enough to take a shot and you're out of electrical tape to wrap up the end of your barrel with, your crown cover will also do that job for you. And you can shop all of that along with all of the nutrition supplements over at stealthyhunter.com. And you can shop from Ryan and Hillary Lampers over there. And we have a discount code through them at checkout. Use the discount code The Northern Hunter. And you can also use that code over at Yukon River Knives to purchase any of your hunting knife needs. Inevitably, when you are at your point of your hunt where you need a skinning, or you're fleshing a hide back at camp, or you're deboning meat, whatever it is, they have a knife for that job. And our other partners, go ahead and check out Batum 907. Absolutely. We'll get some of their stuff ordered here as bear bait season approaches. Try out the Nasty Boar. The Stripper Glitter is the Sow and Heat Estrus. That stuff is awesome. We have killed
great names.
You know, the marketing behind Batum 907 is nothing short of genius, Brian. It's nothing short of genius.
Sounds like it.
But make sure that you go over there to Batum 907 and shop all their products. They are, of course, a local Alaska company with Jess operating out of the Palmer-Wasilla area. She's been a great help to us over the years and has contributed to the killing of hundreds of bears and many more to come in Alaska and other states that still allow the great practice of bear baiting.
Oh, yeah.
And not to forget about our other remaining partners, Weatherby Rifles. If you're in search of a rifle for your upcoming needs this year, be sure to check out the backcountry rifles that Weatherby offers, either in the Mark V, or if you're looking for a little bit more of an affordable price point, they also have the Vanguard, and they have some exciting things coming up this summer, so keep an eye out for that as well. They've got no end to their innovation over there at Weatherby. Adam does a great job with that business. And then last but not least is Hammer Bullets.
Absolutely.
I have a load currently being worked on with the 338 RPM and a 205 grain hammer bullet. And I can't wait to get that out to the range this week, as long as it's not 25 below zero. But so if you have any questions about hammer bullets, go to their website at hammerbullets.com and shop any number of their many, many different options. Every caliber you can conceive of. they've got it, and it's probably in stock, which is a rarity in this economy.
It is.
So make sure that you go check out Hammer Bullets and see their innovative design.
Yep. And hey, if we, just in case our podcast happens to reach anybody who's been living in a box and doesn't know where to find you, Brian, why don't you go ahead and plug wherever they can get your great content?
You bet. Look for me on YouTube, Brian Call Gritty. And wherever podcasts are found, Spotify, Apple, whatever, you can find the Gritty Podcast there. You can find me on Instagram, but I won't respond to anything there. Hardly.
No sliding into the DMs, huh?
No, not really. I mean, I'd have to be on it to see the DMs. Brad will respond sometimes. You can get lucky, but our heart and soul is not in social media really. So we like making movies. We like making podcasts. We like these kinds of long conversations that are just fun with good people. I think that's a valuable piece of content. A photograph and some piffy saying just doesn't do it for me on Instagram. So,
you're in the business of making bear films, and friend,
that's
business
right.
is a booming.
That's right.
That it is. All right. Well, hey, thank you so much for coming on the show, man. It's been a great pleasure getting to talk to you and pick
Thank
your
you,
brain
Brian.
about all this stuff. So,
You too, guys.
Thanks for your time.
Thank you.
And hopefully everybody listening enjoyed the show. If you did, make sure you're subscribing to it on whatever platform you're listening to. Give us a rating and send it to all your friends so they can learn how to hunt bears and everything else up here in Alaska or wherever you happen to be as well. If you have any questions or comments on anything we talked about in this show, make sure you hit us up on our socials. We do tend to respond. And you can find us at The Northern Hunter on either Facebook or Instagram. Or if you go to our website, thenorthernhunter.com, we have a nice, big, easy to see contact button right there. You can get to us.
Right on.
So we are, that's it for this show.
Yeah. We'll see you next week.
So get
Thanks,
out
guys.
there, get after it, and good luck. Appreciate you guys. See you next week.